A beautiful ball is taking place, and in the ballroom, many enjoy themselves as they are led by the beautiful melody that echoes through the space. At the end of the dance with the princess, the gentleman thanks her for it. Then he bids her farewell. The girl barely has time to be alone when she already hears a terrifying voice asking whether she is enjoying the event. She obviously turns around in fear upon recognizing the voice of Duke Adler. Irritated at being ignored, he repeats the question he asked, leaving the princess quite nervous. She explains that she only danced with Archduke Kilian because she was told that the star of the night should be the first to do so. Her answer seems to have left him even more irritated, as he narrows his eyes while staring at her. To escape the situation, the princess turns and gives an awkward laugh, saying they are drawing too much attention standing in the middle of the ballroom, and suggests that they sit down. But before she can leave, the Duke stops her. Adler makes her turn so that their gazes meet, and then asks that the next dance be with him. His manner makes her even more nervous about the situation, but she obviously accepts his request. In the middle of the dance, the two talk. He comments that if she fell in love with him at first sight, what was she doing with another man? The princess denies having done anything other than making sure the banquet was running smoothly. Adler leans closer and says that he is quite conservative when it comes to his woman's past. Showing his psychopathic and jealous side, he adds in a whisper, "When I smell another man on you, I feel like tearing his life away," leaving her utterly terrified. In any case, there are some things the protagonist must never forget, no matter how busy she is, such as the fact that she reincarnated as a character in this romance where the man standing in front of her is a serial killer who will eliminate her. In fact, the timing could not have been worse. On her very first day in this world after transmigrating, it was right in the middle of a scolding the king was giving the princess for arriving late. For Charlotte, this makes no sense at all, since she has just arrived in that world. The man does not even give her time to process the situation before declaring that the next day the engagement between her and the Duke will be announced to the entire empire and that the wedding will take place in 6 months. Then he introduces her fiancé, Duke Irenaeus von Adler. Hearing that name awakens something in the princess, immediately making her remember why the surname is familiar, because at that moment she recalls the introduction of the novel she planned to read. Something she never even got the chance to do, because she ended up dying of exhaustion after staying awake for 5 consecutive days working. And now she is the heroine of that confusing love story, Vendetta Charlotte, without understanding how this happened to her. Her fiancé draws her attention by greeting her, interrupting her thoughts. At first, he seems like just a normal young man and a good match. He says that this is the first time they are formally meeting in the presence of His Majesty. Charlotte steps back a little and asks again whether that young man's surname is really Adler, but she cannot get an answer, as her father, irritated, demands that she speak respectfully to the man who will become her fiancé. He makes it clear that if she is about to beg to be allowed to marry Archduke Kilian again, he will not permit it. He adds that he regrets his daughter never acting with class, since she recently went to his office to throw a tantrum. But the girl is lost in her thoughts because she has no idea who Kilian is. Charlotte defends herself, saying that was not what she was trying to do. But the old man does not give her a chance, saying that if she disobeys him this time, he will strip her of the title of princess once and for all. The girl begs him to listen to her, but her father is firm and orders the chamberlain to escort the engaged couple to the sitting room so they can have a private conversation, completely ignoring what the princess has to say. The young man is already there to take the two of them. As polite as ever, the Duke bids farewell to His Majesty. In the room, various sweets and rolls have been set out, along with tea to accompany them. Each of them sits on a sofa, facing one another. This time, the blonde looks different, as if nothing there is appealing to him, while the princess stares at him without showing any emotion, noticing how different he acts compared to when he was in front of the emperor. Something then catches her attention. She notices a newspaper on the table, with an article about Duke Adler being elected the most desirable man by Asgard Monthlies for the 3rd consecutive time, being the most sought-after bachelor with wealth, prestige, and beauty, and thus all eyes are turned to discovering who the lucky woman will be to steal his heart. For Charlotte, the young man has impressive qualifications, and the lucky lady he will marry is her, a delinquent princess. Irenaeus breaks the silence by saying that he is aware of her desire to marry someone else, making it clear that this is an arranged marriage and that neither of them wants to see the other, so he decides that they will meet again only on the day of the ceremony, since there is no reason for them to see each other before that. This immediately makes Charlotte think that she will be finished on the wedding night, believing that what the blonde truly meant was that at their next meeting, he would do it, and there is nothing she can do about it, since no one would believe that the most desirable man in the empire could be such a terrible person. But in her past life, she was a prosecutor of humble origins, working for a department that fought corruption and violent crimes. Her entire life revolved around investigating murders. So if she wants to save herself, she will have to find evidence about the serial killer in the 6 months before the wedding, and the only way to do that is to infiltrate and start a relationship with the suspect. Making up her mind, Charlotte calls his attention. Then she says, "To be honest, I fell in love with you at first sight, and I think we should start going out." This was something he did not expect at all. After almost choking on his tea, the blonde asks for an explanation of what she is talking about. Charlotte confirms her love at first sight and says that is why she would like a marriage based on love rather than an arranged one. But obviously, Irenaeus does not believe much in this act. After all, even a random dog on the street would know that until this morning she was begging the Emperor for her match to be Archduke Kilian, a very handsome man and a good match. But that does not mean much to her father. Without really knowing the novel, the protagonist assumes that this man everyone talks about must be the princess's crush, and that she must have asked her father to force the Archduke to marry her because her romantic advances were not working. So in this case, it is necessary to improvise. The princess acts like a love-struck fool, saying that the blonde's beauty made her forget about the other man. Irenaeus asks what she is talking about, and the girl insists on using his dazzling beauty. To prove that she is right, she shows him the newspaper with the poll in which he was voted one of the most desirable men in the empire. At that moment, the arrival of His Majesty is announced. Excited, Charlotte says how happy she is that he chose Duke Adler as her fiancé, and reveals her plan to have many dates before the wedding. This is obviously the best thing the Emperor could hear, saying that the girl is finally coming to her senses. He asks Adler to take good care of his youngest daughter, and strangely, the blonde asks if there is any problem. Irenaeus denies it and says that he will obey his orders. Charlotte is in her room, but she is not alone as one of the maids is there to serve her. The girl is there to help her get dressed. Having only read the introduction, all she knows is that she reincarnated as the delinquent princess and that her fiancé, Duke Adler, is the main suspect in the crimes. Because of that, more information is necessary, and for this moment, having an ally would be a good strategy. Charlotte turns to the girl and asks her name. The girl introduces herself as Martha Hudson. By asking more questions, the princess discovers that she has worked there for about 4 years. She soon becomes thoughtful about the recent past. The princess asks what her own name is, leaving the maid quite confused. Even so, Martha replies that it is Charlotte Van House of the Empire of Asgard. The protagonist even comments that it could not have been a shorter name. Then she whispers her name, as if trying to get used to it. Charlotte talks about her small problem of not remembering anything about her life before yesterday. Not even knowing who she truly is, deep down she wonders if the girl will really buy that story. Martha says that it is because of the hunger strike she went on for days, not having a body strong enough to endure it. She starts crying, lamenting that not even the royal physician examined her. From this story, what the protagonist thinks is that the real Charlotte had trouble keeping the same staff for long due to her terrible behavior. If Martha has still worked there for 4 years, then she must have a heart of gold. The princess approaches and comforts her, saying that one thing she knows is that she liked and depended on the girl a lot. Hudson has no idea about that. Charlotte explains that if this story gets out, it will put her already precarious position at risk, so it has to be a secret between the two of them. And in the end, she says, "You are all I have." Martha declares, "Of course, Your Highness, I will do my best to serve you. You can count on me." Suddenly, the girl's comment draws attention when she says that the princess has shown signs of amnesia a few times before. This refers to how much of a jerk the real princess was, shouting at her maids, "Are you telling me I ordered this? Why would I want this abomination? Go do it again. Who are you? I don't remember having an idiot as a maid." And these are things that make sense to Martha. After that, Charlotte manages to gather more information, such as learning about her mother, who is the Emperor's beloved mistress and who died while giving birth. And out of genuine love for her, His Excellency recognized Charlotte as an official princess despite the protests of many people, but his generosity only went that far. And instead of being a good father, he merely called her a princess and showed no interest as the girl grew up. Likewise, it was natural for the Empress and her children to hate her. After all, she is the product of an affair outside of marriage. Other nobles also looked her up and down in a subtle yet unmistakable way. After all, she is a princess in name only, having neither followers nor supporters. Charlotte asks why she went on a hunger strike, and as expected, it was because she was demanding that His Majesty allow her to marry Archduke Kilian, who is also a good match, being a pale, dark-haired man with red eyes, as if he were a vampire. However, the man she was completely in love with despised her because of her delinquent behavior. Learning this leaves the protagonist impressed that the princess risked starving to death just to have a marriage with someone like that. Now her curiosity is to know what Duke Adler did that was so bad that he had to be paired with a woman with such a terrible reputation. To continue her investigation, the protagonist asks for the newspapers from last week to be brought to her. It does not take long for the girl to fulfill her request. This should help at this moment, since at least this is a world where newspapers and other editorial media are active. She thought that something like serial killings would be enough for the press to provide daily updates on the investigation. In any case, as a good investigator, she stays attentive to details until she finds something interesting. It is about the 4 victims, so she needs to gather more information before ending up being the 8th. Determined, the protagonist calls for her ally and declares that she needs to hire an assistant. The weather that had previously been beautiful turns into a terrible storm, turning the once blue sky gray. The girls walk side by side while Martha wants to know why she is looking for an assistant among the prisoners, to which the princess replies that a criminal is quite suitable to work with a villain. Her answer frightens the innocent girl. Martha's older cousin, Stanford, approaches, since he works as a prison guard and had been notified. He orders that prisoner number 0221 be released for a while. The man is released, but is obviously kept in chains so that he has no chance to do anything. Stanford asks her to be careful since the convict is there for having attacked a noble. Already showing irritation, the prisoner remarks that he hopes the princess is not there to hurt him for fun. After all, there is one thing he is sure they say about him. The man is like a mad dog who bites even nobles. As soon as she notices the princess trying to approach, Martha tries to stop her, but her cousin asks her not to interfere. Worried, she explains that Jonathan Watson assaulted a major who was his superior at the time, which is considered an offense against a noble. She risks saying that keeping the man around is far too dangerous, but Charlotte understands this and, confident in herself, asks the 2 of them to leave so she can have a private conversation. And thus, her request is granted. The princess makes it clear that she does not intend to hurt him, but that she would like to buy his loyalty. This leaves Jonathan confused, and he asks what she is talking about, thinking that even for him this is too crazy. Charlotte says that she will pay the bail and vouch for his character. Not foolish at all. The prisoner asks why she would do that, making it clear that he does not intend to become a toy in her hands. The princess stands up and seriously says that she does not like playing with people, so there is no need to worry about that. However, she wants something in return. She tells him about her plan to investigate some matters, and for that she wants an assistant for the next few months. Curious, Jonathan asks why she is making him this offer, and she says that she is there knowing that he is a former imperial investigator. The princess says that if he accepts her proposal, he will be hired as a palace employee and will receive weekly pay in addition to the bail amount. She will also pay all of his mother's hospital expenses. With a smile, she asks for his answer to the proposal. Returning the smile, the man says, "Should I call you master?" As soon as the protagonist arrives at the library, she causes a commotion. The young man stands up in a panic upon noticing her presence and asks for forgiveness. Charlotte asks if it is the first time he has seen a princess there and makes it clear that she will be seen there many times, and therefore expects him to be able to help her with her questions. The librarian is more than willing to help her, and then receives a list of requests. It does not take long for a stack to form on top of the table. He brings everything that was requested, leaving her very grateful for it. Charlotte studies the imperial family tree with the names of the nobility, the history, and the laws, intending to memorize everything and somehow become familiar with the place as quickly as possible in order to survive. Another day begins, and the princess awakens from a good night's sleep. In her former life, the protagonist used to be able to stay awake for days without any problem, but this body is much weaker than her real one. Soon, the entrance of Sir Watson is announced. With a very elegant appearance, the man says that a day earlier he would never have dreamed of working at the palace of the imperial princess. Charlotte is impressed by him calling her master and says that he can relax when he is by her side instead of being so formal. He accepts, since that is what the girl wants, and says that there is also no need to speak so respectfully. After all, he is her assistant. The 2 come to an understanding, deciding that there is no need for so much formality since they will be working together. Charlotte already has her first mission and warns that as soon as he finishes, he must burn the paper she handed him. Jonathan opens it and reads the contents. Then he asks if her wish is to gather information about the killings, and Charlotte confirms, saying that she would like to see detailed records of the case. At least she knows that what differentiates this case from others is that different characteristics are left at the crime scenes, which can be called traces of the criminal's habits. And to discover what these details are, she needs the case records. A maid rushes into the room, warning that the emperor orders the princess to attend the morning banquet. Obviously, Charlotte is not very familiar with this, but this banquet is a weekly event where the emperor talks with his children during breakfast. It is not something casual, but rather a meeting with the presence of high-ranking authorities, where His Excellency's children are judged to see who is most fit for the throne by answering a series of questions. To be clear, Charlotte did not usually appear at this because, among all of the Emperor's children, she is last in the line of succession to the throne. While the protagonist panics trying to understand the reason for wanting her presence, since it was not part of the plan, Martha is happy with the news, saying that if she manages to please her father, her personal budget will be increased. The girl pushes her to go, reminding her that she already spent what little she had by hiring Jonathan. Her presence is announced. Everyone there turns their necks to take a look at the delinquent princess. Her father is already stern, commenting on her lateness as always. Charlotte sits down and asks for forgiveness for it, making it clear that she was only informed at the last minute. Her older brother wastes no time saying that he believes the maids did not read the invitation to her. Camilla also provokes her, saying that she has never seen her sister read, and doubting that she even knows how. The protagonist knows that these are the two people in the novel who hated Charlotte, but unfortunately for them, she is not the real delinquent princess. So she just smiles, playing dumb, and asks, "Really?" This irritates them, with Frederick asking whether, in addition to not being able to read, she also cannot hear, and the girl simply agrees with all the taunts. The Emperor soon puts an end to these sibling squabbles. His Excellency explains that he called her there because Duke Adler is present, after all. The engagement between the two of them is a celebration for the entire empire. Camilla mocks again, saying that her sister's hunger strike was not entirely pointless, since she is lighter than before and was able to change her interest from Killian to Adler without any trouble. Another guest mocks her, denying that the lightness is due to lack of food, but rather because Charlotte does not carry much with her, such as class and knowledge, which draws laughter from everyone present. The older siblings tease her, saying that there are only flowers in the girl's head. Camilla even looks to see if she managed to hit her, but Charlotte has that silly smile again, which leaves her quite frustrated. Charlotte then looks at her fiancé, but the man does not return anything at all, making the protagonist wonder what his problem is for looking at her that way. Even so, she does not give up and winks at him in a very cute way, making Irenaeus choke on his tea. The meeting continues with the eldest son. The issue at hand is that the harvest is abundant, which will cause the price of wheat to drop, so one brother's idea is to destroy the fields, reducing supply to maintain the proper value, while another suggests focusing on solving the cause and exporting the wheat to neighboring countries. Another guest comments that it is Charlotte's first appearance in a long time and asks whether she has any opinion on the problem. The girl sighs. This was already expected by her siblings, and Frederick warns that if she is going to say for the god of harvest to solve everything like last time, it would be better for her to stay quiet. She knows she will never inherit the throne anyway, so she was just going to sit there and remain quiet, listening to the others speak, but they have already gone too far. Charlotte then says that she does not think either of their suggestions will solve the problem, making both of them question her. She states the obvious, that leaving the commoners enraged if the Imperial army destroys the wheat fields would mean the two of them completely miss the point. This makes Frederick irritated. In any case, their logic does not make sense. Her brother's answer only considered a single perspective, taking into account only price in terms of supply and demand. Although Camilla's answer was a little better, free trade would only work in the modern world, not in this one. After all, the empire is a country that obtained many vassal states through its conquests in an attempt to secure independence, so the suggestion of freely exporting wheat would be problematic. Camilla provokes her, asking if she cannot find a flaw in her logic. Charlotte makes her point by saying that neighboring countries could use the wheat as military rations, posing a serious threat to the empire, making her answer just as wrong as Frederick's. Then she concludes, "If that happens, we may have no choice but to ask the god of war to come help us." Charlotte stands up, ready to give her suggestion. For her, the best solution is to give up wheat cultivation, and instead, provide financial support to farmers so they can use some of those fields to grow fruit and vegetables, which would naturally reduce the wheat supply. This is the theory of trading volume and price discussed in microeconomics, and luckily the protagonist took the course in college, so no one can beat her at this. Camilla stands up, irritated, insulting her sister, saying that she is too stupid to understand such things, and she questions whether she really thinks that fruits and vegetables can grow in the same land used before. Confident, Charlotte says that it can be used for barley, which completely takes her sister by surprise. Her idea is to make alcohol from it and export it without fear of retaliation. The Emperor thinks it over and realizes that it makes sense. Her father is surprised and even comments that he did not know Charlotte had such a sharp mind, but of course, this does not please her enemies. To their horror, her father declares that from that moment on, his youngest daughter will participate in the morning banquet every week. Thus, that day's banquet is concluded. The two sisters end up crossing paths along the way. Camilla takes the opportunity to tell her not to get arrogant because she only got lucky this time. And Charlotte plays dumb once again and thinks that, compared to criminals, members of royalty are gentle even when they are insulting her. Her siblings leave the dining hall. This no longer matters. In any case, she has her own objective to worry about. As she is about to leave, Charlotte ends up crossing paths with someone else once again. This time, it is her fiancé and suspect number 1. With a gentle smile, she asks whether he did not forget. Charlotte steps closer to him and mentions their meeting later that day. Then the two of them have their moment together on a beautiful sunny day, surrounded by lovely trees, accompanied by tea, just like last time. But there is only one difference. This time, he is openly observing her. Charlotte asks his full name and the Duke confirms it, as well as saying hers in full. The protagonist once again laments such long names. She asks if she can call him Renius, and obviously her request is denied. She even suggests that he call her by her first name, but Adler denies that as well. Charlotte smiles, suggesting that they really should take things slowly, and soon says that she has a few questions to ask. Getting into the spirit of her former self, she says, "You have the right to remain silent. Everything you say can and will be used against you," which obviously confuses Arrhenius, and the girl lets it slip that it is just a habit from her past life. Charlotte then takes some time to think of something better, and explains that the questions are meant to get to know him better, because as he already knows, she fell in love with him at first sight. Adler makes an observation and asks if that is how the princess looks at someone she fell in love with at first sight. Charlotte asks if he cannot see the burning desire in her eyes. Being more precise, it is the burning desire to catch the murderer. Remaining calm, the Duke simply picks up his cup, and to be fair, the protagonist admits that despite him being a criminal, she cannot deny that he is exactly her type. Irenaeus accepts her idea, letting her ask questions freely, promising that he will try to give only truthful answers. Charlotte is ready for her first question, which secretly is an interrogation for her investigation, so she hopes her fiancé is ready, because this will destroy him. Her first question is who the Duke's first love was. After interrogating him for quite some time, she manages to gather information such as him being 27 years old, having graduated from the Empire's military academy, having only one younger sister, and that his father died of unknown causes, but nothing about a first love, which makes Irenaeus question why she wants to know that. Charlotte says it is something crucial to know about her man's past, and the way she calls him seems to have affected him. The most important thing in a murder investigation is the motive. Since the suspect's past can provide clues, it is something very useful. And if a man killed his wife on their wedding night, it is logical to assume that he had involvement with a lover. The protagonist considers the possibility that the Duke already had someone and was then forced by the Emperor to marry his youngest daughter, questioning whether he committed the crime out of spite. Duke Adler draws her attention, making it clear that the girl is not in a position to judge someone's past. Charlotte laughs and says that she left her past behind this time, and in a way, she is right about that. She adds that now her fiancé is all she thinks about, leaving Irenaeus startled and somewhat surprised. The princess tries to make him comfortable, saying that he does not need to hide these things, because she is quite open-minded when it comes to her man's past. Even so, he insists that there is no first love and that he does not care whether she believes it or not, since it is the truth. So Charlotte takes advantage of this and asks if she is the first and last in his heart. Irenaeus confirms and asks if that is a problem. For her, it is very strange that the most sought-after bachelor in the Empire has never even had a relationship. This time, it is Duke Adler who wants to ask a question. The young man begins by saying that he has heard that when she dedicates herself to something, she tends to be quite persistent and asks whether she will act the same way with him. Charlotte soon realizes that he must be talking about her former obsession with Killian, and that he feels uncomfortable just imagining being treated the same way. But in this case, perhaps it is because by paying so much attention to her fiancé, she might discover that he is a criminal. Irenaeus continues, wanting an explanation for this kind of treatment all of a sudden, and asks what she saw in him. Despite putting on her silly face as usual, the protagonist has no idea what the young man meant by that. Dazed by the question, she answers once again that it was love at first sight, and asks whether more than that is really necessary as proof. Duke Adler wants to know what she saw in him that she found so attractive, and since he is her type, it should not be that hard to say. This makes Charlotte nervous, knowing that if she does not answer quickly, she might make him suspicious. So she talks about his hair, shining like the morning sun, his blue eyes like a crystal clear lake, his porcelain skin, how his upturned nose makes her feel as if she is looking at a statue, and his full lips. The princess also mentions his broad shoulders and imposing height, as well as his sculpted body, his sweet yet chilling voice, and an elegant aura, and that considering all these attributes, she could not help but fall in love at first sight. Charlotte says all of this while deep down feeling that it all sounds made up. As for Irenaeus, he simply gives a basic response. I see. Finally, their meeting comes to an end. Martha is worried about her highness, who is sprawled on the bed, and the princess replies that she is fine, just mentally and physically exhausted. The dark-haired maid informs her that Jonathan is there and suggests that if her mistress is tired, she can send him away. She realizes that Charlotte is not in condition to go to the sitting room at the moment, and the girl agrees with that. But the problem is that the young man is there because of the requested work and cannot simply be sent away, so the princess asks her to have him come to the bedroom, which leaves Martha somewhat surprised. Charlotte remembers that it was Martha herself who said she was not in condition to go to the sitting room, not to mention that her reputation is terrible, so she believes that this will not make things any worse. As soon as Sir Watson arrives, the protagonist apologizes if this is rude, but explains that she is far too exhausted to leave the room. The young man is understanding and, as expected, has with him what was requested in the morning. It is a copy of the Imperial Police investigation records, and she asks how he managed to get that. Jonathan simply says that it is a trade secret. The document contains precise information. The first victim was 16 weeks ago, a 20-year-old woman who was a governess living at Count Morstan's residence, who was brutally killed on a weekday afternoon. The second was a week later, a 30-year-old man, head chef of a high-end steak restaurant called Sholto Steakhouse, who was also killed with a rope inside his own workplace late at night. 10 weeks ago, it was the turn of the third victim, a 40-year-old woman who owned a small bakery, a place frequented mainly by common people, who suffered the same fate as the others while walking to do volunteer work on a weekend morning. The last one was 8 weeks ago, this time a man of the same age, the secretary of Marquis Dost, an imperial official, and the incident occurred near his home in the early hours of the morning. All of them met the same end, with a rope. Jonathan says that the perpetrator is suspected to be a man in good physical condition, at least 180 centimeters tall with military training, and she asks whether the cases seem to be random without a clear motive. What is known is that Duke Adler is a fit man who graduated from the Imperial Military Academy, but there are many men like that in the Empire, so this is not sufficient proof that the culprit is really the blonde, which is why Charlotte's mission is to discover the exact motive and the criminal's method. She asks whether it would be difficult to check the crime scenes or the bodies, and since the last crime happened 2 months ago, Jonathan believes that everything has already been cleaned and the body destroyed by time, leaving only the investigation records, which is bad for helping the princess. Jonathan asks the reason why Her Highness is investigating this, and she gives the same answer she received before. It's a trade secret. The young man says that he only does the work he is given, so in any case, the reason does not matter. And he asks if there is anything else to do. Charlotte asks him to investigate Duke Adler. As expected, the man says that he is her fiancé and says he is sure she knows him better. The former criminal asks if she is interested in the Duke's relationships with women. Charlotte orders that she wants to know everything, and the more private, the better. In any case, Jonathan says that he will do as instructed. The protagonist still cannot tell him why she is investigating, and even if everyone finds out what she is doing, she can simply use the fact that she is a wicked villain as an excuse. She sent a summons to Duke Adler for the investigation, which should have already arrived. So we move to the blonde's residence, where he is in his office, working. He is interrupted by his secretary, who delivers a letter that the Duke already knows who it is from. Charlotte has been sending letters every day since their last meeting. Irenaeus then opens it to see what it is about. In addition to a declaration that she misses looking at his beautiful face, the girl asks for another meeting. Back at the imperial residence, Martha rushes into the room. Very cheerful, she shows a letter from Irenaeus, which impresses the princess. After all, her fiancé has been ignoring her letters for some time, so she believes that he changed his mind. In the letter, he schedules a meeting at the Opera House at 7 p.m. She was about to use her father's authority to force him to meet her if he continued without responding, but the princess is happy that she did not have to go that far. Martha, who is very excited about the meeting, tells Her Highness to get moving and start preparing. She is so excited that she even forgets her good manners. The time for the meeting finally arrives. As soon as the Duke arrives, he greets the princess. His attire is simply stunning, drawing compliments from his fiancé. Charlotte even jokes, saying that she once mistook him for a statue at the Opera House. But he does not respond, which makes the protagonist realize that this investigation will be harder than she thought, even more so when the Duke turns to enter the hall without waiting for his fiancé. The performance is already underway. Irenaeus comments that this is the most popular presentation in the Empire and that it is difficult to get tickets. Meanwhile, the protagonist wonders why the man agreed to see her if things were going to be like this between them in the end. The venue is dark, not allowing Charlotte to clearly see his facial expressions, and it is also not a good environment for conversation. so she has no choice but to watch the opera until the end. And worst of all, Adler makes it clear that he does not want to be disturbed. Charlotte says that she would prefer to sit facing him and have a friendly conversation rather than watch a show like this, because it makes her happy to look at his face. Her wish is to go somewhere more private so that she can interrogate him properly. But the Duke's response is that he cannot do that every day, making it clear that they cannot meet all the time. He explains that his work schedule does not allow it, and that he can only see her once a week, which makes Charlotte put on a sad expression. Then Irenaeus increases it to twice, but no more than that. Despite expressing that she wants to see him every day, the princess is satisfied with that amount. After all, it is all she needs. Charlotte even plans that next time she will take him to a private place. Lost in these schemes, the girl ends up falling asleep without noticing and is awakened when everything is over. She becomes startled, realizing what happened. The hall that was previously dark is now fully lit, revealing that everyone has already left, leaving only the staff who are cleaning up the mess left behind. Desperate, she realizes that it may have ended quite a while ago. Charlotte apologizes, explaining that she has been having trouble sleeping lately, unable to believe that she fell asleep on the shoulder of a man who will end up killing her. She also feels resentful, thinking that the Duke must believe she has no class. Suddenly, Irenaeus asks if she has been having trouble sleeping because of him, because she cannot stop thinking about his face. Remembering that it was something written in the letter, Charlotte confirms that she stays awake every night thinking about him. The young man stands up hastily while saying that he will notify her in advance about the next meetings and asks her to sleep well. Then he bids her farewell and leaves her there. This attitude obviously does not please the princess. A few days pass and she receives an invitation to a debutante ball. Charlotte asks Martha to read the contents, and the girl does so, saying that it asks about her attendance and comments that Archduke Kilian will probably be there. The dark-haired maid asks whether they should accept, thinking about that former love. But the princess remembers that she no longer has any interest in him, and that all her attention is now focused on her fiancé. Martha does not even know how mistaken she is. In any case, the servant says that she will send a letter to the Morstan household, saying that they will not attend. But hearing that name catches the protagonist's attention. Then the maid explains that the ball is for the Count's daughter, Lady Marilyn Morstan. Charlotte asks to see the letter. Serial killings usually have time intervals without much variation between them, but the one she is investigating does not follow a pattern. They occurred 16, 15, 10, and 8 weeks ago, and she finds it strange that another one did not happen during the last interval. Meanwhile, seeing her mistress in silence, Martha believes it is because she has not completely gotten over Kilian. But returning to the protagonist, according to the documents Jonathan gave her, the first victim was the governess of the Morstan household. Seeing that there was no specific time pattern in the crimes, she concludes that the perpetrator does not kill people when he feels like it, but rather when he has a motive. She thinks that if she goes to the place where the victim used to live, she might be able to find clues that point to the motive. She quickly tells Martha that she has changed her mind. Charlotte then decides that she will go to the debutante ball. This makes the servant happy, and she comments that it will be the first time the princess meets Kilian since the engagement, wishing that she will be especially beautiful. And once again, Charlotte makes it clear that she has no more interest in the young man. Suddenly, the dark-haired maid becomes discouraged, because she remembers that Her Highness does not have a dress to wear, which makes no sense to Charlotte, who goes to her wardrobe and looks at the pieces she has available. She looks at all the dresses there. Martha, in disbelief, questions whether she is really going to wear any of those to the ball. Anne comments that even though it is the princess's style, it might be more sensible to wear something different for this occasion. To Charlotte, her dresses are still bright and lively, having no idea what the girl means. And this causes a great hysteria in Martha, who shouts. Outside, the other maids lament poor Martha, who has to put up with the delinquent. Looking at the options, there is a snow-white dress with beads that could very well be a wedding dress. Another one is short, with a deep neckline and an open back, in a striking scarlet color, and one made of lace that looks like a giant pile of cotton candy. Martha realizes the amnesia and reminds the girl of her habit of always buying extremely flashy dresses because she wanted to draw Kilian's attention, while the protagonist thinks that besides being flashy, they are insane, since they are not her style at all. At least one of them Charlotte did not find as bad as the others, but that one was used recently at Lady Irina's wedding and even had a veil to complete the look. Knowing this story, Charlotte questions why no one stopped her from doing that, but poor Kate did not have a good fate when she begged to at least not wear the veil. At least the princess convinces herself to buy a new dress. But Martha reminds her that the entire month's budget was used for the bail and hiring of Sir Watson. Desperate, Charlotte asks for a solution. The dark-haired maid goes to the wardrobe and takes the only option to wear. She takes the dress and shows it to the princess, who panics, refusing to wear that. The protagonist is in yet another meeting with her beloved criminal. Charlotte tells the blonde that if he is busy, he does not need to be her partner at the ball. Her words make him stop. Irenaeus then asks why she sent him the letter, which she does not even remember. So the Duke takes from his pocket the one she sent a few days ago, where, in addition to a provocative declaration, she asks for a more private meeting. Seeing the crumpled paper, Charlotte only thinks that he must have been offended by the content, so she says that she was expressing her feelings and asks if there is something wrong with that. Irenaeus asks if she is really in love with him. With a silly smile, the princess declares, "Heaven, earth, and even the palace chandeliers know that. I love you, Duke Adler." Irenaeus turns to her and says, "Then why are you saying that I do not need to be your partner at the debutante ball?" Which Charlotte finds strange since she thought that would have made him happy. Thus begins the girl's paranoia, believing that the criminal knows her reason for wanting to go and does not want her snooping around. Smiling, Charlotte says that she does not want the man she is in love with to do something that makes him uncomfortable because of her. Looking irritated, the Duke retorts, making it clear that he never said he was uncomfortable with that. He says that he plans to attend the ball, and if he does not go with his fiancée as his partner, it would ruin his reputation in high society. Realizing that the blonde only wants to keep up appearances, the princess smiles and says that she is looking forward to going together. Then the girl says that she has a small problem with her dress. Charlotte prepares herself and then asks the question, "Would you mind if I showed a bit of cleavage that day?" Catching the man completely off guard. Irenaeus asks if she wants to wear an immodest dress that reveals her cleavage to the other guests. Charlotte then tells the truth about her palace not having the budget to buy her a new one. She also says that she is against having to go wearing something like that. Irenaeus only grows more serious and turns away, stepping back, which makes Charlotte think that this is because her fiancé believes she has no class. More days pass, and finally another morning banquet takes place. Martha, who will help her mistress get dressed, wishes her good luck. Charlotte tells her not to worry, confident because her goal is to secure an increase in the budget for her palace. Already prepared, she heads to the room where the meeting takes place. She cannot believe that she receives such a minimal budget even though she is a princess. But on that day, she is ready to win the emperor's trust and make him realize that it is worth investing more in her. The real surprise of the day is that Duke Adler, who is participating, is the one who greets her first. But as she avoids him, her attention is drawn to something else. Her middle sister shouts that the head chef should know about her nut allergy. She then demands that the servant remove the dish. The woman explains that the chef is absent due to a family emergency, and still irritated, Camilla demands that the servant herself eat the pancakes. While this is happening, one of the guests begins the banquet. The servant removes the pancakes under the angry gaze of the princess. This time, the topic is the impact that the decrease in the number of mana stones and mages has on the empire, and what the future course of action should be. Charlotte is surprised to hear this, since no one had said that this world had magic. So her strategy is simply to listen to her siblings' answers first, like last time, and prepare for her turn. But fate is not very favorable to her. And since she led the debate the previous week, she has chosen to start that day's discussion. The servant brings a new dish to Princess Camilla, who refuses to eat. The emperor, ignoring the scene, demands that his daughter speak. Charlotte is nervous. After all, she does not have a good answer for this, and she is certain that everyone will think she was just lucky that day. Suddenly, there is a scream and someone falls to the ground. The servant is on the floor, writhing, as foam begins to come out of her mouth, leaving Camilla frightened by the scene. On the ground, the woman continues to convulse, leaving everyone frozen in terror. The delinquent princess quickly stands up and goes to the woman. Camilla, who is behind her, asks what she is doing. Charlotte performs a quick analysis of the body, seeing the lips and fingertips turning purple, as well as bright red blotches on the skin and breath exuding the smell of bitter almonds. She turns around and orders that no one touch anything in the dining hall, not even bringing anything close to the mouth or nose especially. Among the shocked crowd, one person catches the protagonist's attention. She stares at Duke Adler there. The problem is that this method of killing is different, so there is no chance it was the blonde's work. After a long sigh, Charlotte reveals that it is cyanide and that someone used it to poison the banquet participants, leaving everyone shocked. With the ensuing commotion, the banquet participants are prevented from leaving, which generates murmurs all around as well as certain suspicions. A knight present thanks the princess for preventing a major crisis from happening. An investigation is carried out, confirming that cyanide was mixed into the powdered sugar on the pancakes and was also found in the kitchen's salt shaker. With all this, Charlotte only says that she was lucky. Then she remembers earlier, when the servant was carrying out her duties. Someone sprinkled poisoned powdered sugar onto the food in the plate, and as she carried the dish, she ate a bit of the food, thinking it would be a waste to throw it away, thus resulting in her poisoning. The princess asks whether the sous chef is the main suspect. This is because the head chef was absent, leaving the other in his place. The knight says that the man refuses to admit his crime and continues to claim that he had nothing to do with it, and as a last resort, they are trying to force him to talk. But to Charlotte, the culprit is the head chef. The problem is that he did not show up and, as explained earlier, claimed it was a family emergency. Charlotte argues that the head chef is the one who decides the menu every week, and is also responsible for managing the sugar and salt used in the kitchen. The princess is certain that something was done the last time he was there. These two ingredients are valuable commodities in the empire, so the sous chef would not have the authority to manage them. So her suggestion is to arrest him before he flees. After hearing all this, the knight is completely shocked. He rushes and orders everyone to go after the head chef before it is too late. As expected, the criminal is captured near the border, trying to flee the empire. It turns out that he was a spy from the Curtain Republic, who had infiltrated the palace for quite some time. This place became a vassal state of the empire as part of the conquest 7 years ago, and since then it has continuously revolted. This failed assassination attempt by his spy resulted in 3 consecutive days of carnage in the imperial palace. Everyone who failed to notice the presence of a spy in the palace was executed, and Charlotte scored many points with the emperor at the morning banquet, exactly as she had planned. It was a little different from what she had in mind, but His Majesty was so pleased that he doubled her budget. The princess is in the library. While she studies, she thinks about the events of that day and about how happy Martha was when she learned how much money she had secured. Now she hopes that things will continue going so well. She stays there until she realizes that it is quite late. Having never stayed out until that hour, she worries that she needs to head back soon, even though she doubts that anything will happen. Charlotte then makes her way back to the palace. As she walks with only the moon as her light, a noise makes the girl freeze. She even starts thinking about the possibility that the head chef was not the only spy who infiltrated the palace to get rid of the imperial family. Besides that, many people there hate the princess, so she quickens her pace. The protagonist ends up tripping over a stone and consequently falling to the ground. Defenseless, the girl begins to scream for help. It does not take long for someone to appear. It is Jonathan, who ran over after hearing a scream, worriedly asking if someone was following her. Extending his hand, he asks if she is all right. Charlotte quickly gets up and throws herself into the man's arms. She begins to tremble, which makes him even more concerned. Suddenly, in the middle of the woods, a cute little cat appears. This was the girl's pursuer. Already safe inside the palace, Jonathan comes right after her, laughing that the girl had been asking to be saved from a cat. Annoyed, the princess turns around, defending herself by saying that she simply did not notice because it was very dark. Then she asks the man to stop laughing and tell her what he discovered in the investigation. The former convict asks if he should start with the part that will interest her the most. Pulling up a chair to sit down, he says that she can relax. With his investigation, he concluded that Duke Adler's personal life is impeccable, with no scandal involving a woman, which almost makes him feel bad for wasting such good looks. But this kind of thing is what interests the protagonist the least. Continuing the story, the same cannot be said about the blonde's father. Irenaeus has a complicated family history, with his mother having passed away 5 years ago from a chronic illness, and thus the current duchess is his stepmother. Wanting to know more, Charlotte asks what their relationship is like. They are not very close, but apparently the young man adores his younger sister, Lady Blair, who is his remaining blood relative. Another thing the girl asks is whether he knows the reason the Duke did not enlist in the Imperial Army after graduating from the academy. However, that is something only Irenaeus himself can explain. Everyone commented on how unusual that was, since in Asgard, having experience in the Imperial Army facilitates social advancement. The Emperor, being so passionate about conquests, gives excellent treatment to soldiers, so it is strange that he did not go. This only makes him increasingly suspicious. Going deeper into the matter, Jonathan then reveals that the governess of the Adler household was the first victim of the criminal they are investigating. Charlotte is interested and wants to know more. Recalling the earlier incident, Jonathan jokes, asking why someone so fearful who screamed in terror at a cat would investigate something like serial killings. The princess denies being afraid of the animal and says that she was simply alone in the dark and did not know what to expect. Sir Watson asks whether she does not have a personal guard to protect her. But according to Martha, Charlotte dismissed all her guards because none of them looked like Killian. The man almost cries over such a foolish reason, and irritated, the girl defends herself, saying that she was going to hire new guards anyway. Jonathan then asks, "How about I protect you, Your Highness?" With that decided and knowing this story, Martha demands that Sir Watson do a good job protecting the princess, and they accompany the princess to the boutique. Escaping the frightening stares, the new personal guard asks if he can really be there, but it is hot outside, and Charlotte needs help choosing the right dress, which surprises Martha, that the man also has the right to give his opinion. Getting closer to the girl, Charlotte whispers for her not to overdo it, reminding her that Jonathan is there protecting her for free, something the little brat had almost forgotten. Martha, all smiles, praises Jonathan for his good work. Another young man appears, informing them that since Lady Morstan's debutante ball is approaching, most of the dresses have already been sold. Martha says that they should have gone earlier, but for the princess it is fine, and she only needs to take the most discreet and conservative dress among those remaining. The young man who is still there is shocked to hear Charlotte say this, since her reputation with dresses is quite different. Meanwhile, the protagonist asks her companions to sit down, and Jonathan comments that he has never been in a place like this before. The girl explains that she will try them on one by one, asking them to give their opinions. The first dress is something very modest in a dark blue tone, and to Martha, it does not do justice to the princess's beauty. For Jonathan, the second dress makes her look like a cupcake covered in icing, hidden under all those layers of lace. Charlotte comes out of the fitting room to show the next one, and it is so terrible that the look of horror on both of their faces is inevitable, making the girl leave very disappointed, while the guard and the maid question the shop assistant about having only such ugly dresses. After some more time, Charlotte finally finds one that makes Martha think it is perfect. The beautiful blue dress looks as if it were made especially for the princess. Even Jonathan has a stunned expression, saying that the girl looks as if she came from heaven, but he quickly corrects himself, saying that she just looks human. Jonathan takes her hand and, after observing, advises her to eat much more. On the palm of her hand, there are still the scratches from the previous night. Charlotte says that she is quite fragile, but healthier than she looks, asking him not to worry. Changing the subject, the princess turns and tells the man that she will take the dress. He says that he will tailor it according to her measurements and that it will be sent to the palace when it is ready. As the three walk through the streets, they pass by a confectionery shop and hear some girls commenting that both Killian and Adler will be at the ball. They have fun imagining that it will be a huge spectacle and betting on which of the young men will become the target of obsession. The black-haired woman says, "I can't imagine how distressed you must be with someone like that about to become your sister-in-law." This does not last long until they notice the princess's presence. At least the three girls stand up, saying that they are already leaving, but Charlotte suggests that they have some tea. After all, it is not every day that they meet like this. The protagonist hopes to get more information there. Wanting to know how they know Lady Morstan, Charlotte only receives gossip about the girl being in a relationship with Lord Henry. Trying to get a clue about how they met, the subject turns to House Fragonard being renowned perfumers who would obviously invest in their business. As far as is known, at least these three women are from families that support Camilla and as such act as her loyal followers. So they accepted having tea because they did not dare refuse a princess's invitation, but in fact, they do not want to talk to Charlotte. The girls continue talking about investments, certain that they will benefit from being contracted, and the black-haired one intends to use the profits to open a salon. Charlotte becomes interested in knowing what they are talking about, but one of them stands up, saying that her mother wants to have dinner with her and that she cannot be late. They even encourage Lady Blair to do the same. Each girl comes up with an excuse to slip away, bidding farewell with false politeness, saying that it was an honor to be in her presence and thus leaving her alone. Unfortunately, Charlotte did not get any information, since they kept cutting her off the whole time. Blair, who is still there, takes her leave properly, apologizing for the lack of consideration. The young woman turns to leave, but she is stopped when the princess grabs her arm. Charlotte is serious and says she will get straight to the point, warning her not to invest in the perfume business that Lady Christina was talking about earlier, making it clear that it is a scam. Worried, the girl asks why. The princess explains that they have not even started the business yet, so there is no way to guarantee that level of profit, which is a strong indicator that something is wrong, not to mention that they present nothing substantial as proof. Charlotte used to deal with scammers all the time, so she knows that guaranteed high and constant profits are synonymous with a scam. And she adds, "It may be hard to believe what I'm saying, but trust me and do not invest." She says that if she is wrong and it turns out to be a good business, she will compensate her for the profits she would have obtained, which surprises Blair, who asks why Her Highness would go to such lengths. With a big smile, Charlotte says to remember what she said, and that she does not want the young girl to get hurt even more, since they will soon be family. Lady Blair is genuinely touched by this gesture, but shyly lowers her head in thanks. Taking advantage of this, the princess says that if her advice ends up being useful, the next time they meet she would like to know about her brother, because there are many things she would like to know about her fiancé. And obviously, without knowing the true reason behind it, Blair is happy to do so. The princess accompanies her future sister-in-law to her carriage and bids her farewell. Soon after, she rejoins her companions, and a worried Martha asks if something unpleasant happened, since those ladies are famous for their bad attitudes, believing that Camilla protects them. But all Charlotte replies is, They say that if you sit in silence by the riverbank, soon you will see the body of an enemy float toward you, being strange as always. But instead of a grand victory, the princess discovers that those girls deceived her, leaving her to pay the entire bill. At last, the day of the debutante ball arrives, along with the custom-made dress. The three of them curiously go to take a look. However, it does not look like the one from that day, making them think it was sent by mistake. It is extremely beautiful and in a different color from the one chosen, but there is no way it was a mistake, since it looks more expensive, and the shopkeeper would obviously be careful not to incur a loss. The mystery is about to be solved, because along with the dress there is a letter from Duke Adler. It says that Irenaeus will pick her up at the palace at 6 on the day of the ball. Martha is immediately moved, because in addition to all this chivalry, he even sent such a dress, believing that her mistress is very lucky to have a fiancé like that, without knowing that the man is like ice when the two are alone. Charlotte puts on her beautiful dress, looking absolutely stunning. She asks Jonathan to take one of the carriages and go to Count Morstan's residence, and to wait nearby until the party is over, just as a precaution. Finally, Duke Adler arrives, leaving the princess enchanted. It is impossible to deny that the young man possesses great beauty, worthy of being considered the most sought-after bachelor. Irenaeus walks up to the princess and extends his hand. The two head to the ball in a beautiful carriage and spend the time talking, with the Duke starting by asking for her opinion about his tuxedo. Smiling, the girl says that she cannot help but think how elegant, sophisticated, and classic it is, something that will make no one at the ball as dazzling as himself. Hearing that, Irenaeus asks if she fell in love once again, this time showing no humility at all toward mere mortals. Forcing a smile, Charlotte says, "Your charm has no end," even without understanding his behavior and wondering if her fiancé has always been this egocentric. The ball is in full swing, and the center of gossip is Princess Charlotte and her engagement to Duke Adler. And speaking of them, they arrive together in the ballroom. Having never been to a place like this before, the protagonist has no idea how to act, hoping that at least Irenaeus will help her. They have barely arrived when the Duke is stopped by an acquaintance who is surprised by his presence there. Lord Bridget also greets the princess. Laughing, he says that he almost did not recognize her, since this is not how he usually sees her at balls. Getting straight to the point, the silver-haired man says that he did not know she had such a modest dress in her wardrobe. Charlotte replies that she has been trying to broaden her horizons and thanks him for noticing. Being very tactless, the Lord says that if he had known the girl had such a gentle side, he would have asked her to marry him back when His Majesty was personally looking for a noble to be his daughter's husband. The protagonist immediately realizes that he is trying to jab at her by implying that no one showed interest in marrying her at first. So the girl replies, "I'm sorry you weren't fast enough," hitting the jerk right where it hurts. Turning to the Duke, Bridget asks if it is all right to borrow the fiancé. Since he rarely shows his face in high society, everyone is extremely curious about him. With her cute smile, Charlotte says she has no problem with that, but obviously it irritates her. While her fiancé becomes a showcase for the other nobles, all that remains for the princess is to sit and observe everything around her. Those people never approached him when he was in her company. Among them, Duke Adler almost looks like a ray of light. Everyone is enjoying each other's company. This situation makes the protagonist think that perhaps Charlotte wore extravagant dresses because she wanted attention. Realizing this line of thought, she even wonders if she has become attached to Charlotte after living in her body for a few weeks. In that sense, she even finds it good that no one pays attention to her presence, because she has work to do. In the middle of her attempt to investigate, the princess ends up bumping into someone. It is the Archduke of the North, James von Killian. The man abruptly turns away to leave her path. Killian saw no need to ingratiate himself with the imperial family, just as he did not hesitate to humiliate Charlotte for her obsession with him. In a way, the man is responsible for the princess being treated as a joke by everyone. So at the very least, the protagonist wants to restore Charlotte's honor. Actually, her own honor. So before he disappears from sight, she says that this is no way to treat a princess of the empire. After all, he should be aware that turning his back on a member of the imperial family constitutes an offense against royalty. Killian turns around and asks if she has now changed her strategy to blackmail. Charlotte makes it clear that the next time she sees him, and he does not show behavior that makes her feel the need to reprimand him, she will accuse him of lèse-majesté. With that, the girl asks permission to take her leave. This seems to wound the Archduke's ego, for she simply walks away like that. Showing no interest, Charlotte asks if there is anything else they need to talk about. After all, as he knows, she is engaged to Duke Adler, and she asks him not to feed the illusion that she still has feelings for Killian. Charlotte leaves, leaving the Archduke feeling like a jerk. She goes to the room at the end of the corridor on the second floor of the Morstan residence annex, with the intention of investigating, but everything is clean. Thanks to Jonathan's notes, she was able to find the first victim's room easily. Suddenly, the princess starts sneezing, and it gets worse with coughing. Charlotte soon realizes that it is an allergic reaction. She was about to leave before things got worse when a maid entered the room. The protagonist turns to look at her. Her concern is that news might spread that a princess is investigating serial killings in a count's residence. However, it seems the maid truly does not know that she is a princess. So Charlotte thinks about being aggressive enough that the woman will not even have time to suspect anything. That is why she plays her card and asks, "Don't you know who I am?" Acting like the real Charlotte, she questions whether all the servants of House Morstan are incompetent. The red-haired maid lowers her head, apologizing for that, and the princess continues her act, complaining about the dirty place that left her with hives all over her body as soon as she entered. The maid apologizes once again, but says that she is mistaken about one thing. She explains that the allergy was not caused by dirt, but probably by peaches, because the person who used to occupy the room was always experimenting with fruits. She also says that she heard every corner was full of fuzz, and that some maids also developed hives while cleaning the place. Thinking about it, Charlotte does not know what connection peaches might have with the crimes, if any, this being just more information about the victim. Maintaining her performance, the princess says she will let the poor behavior slide this time. The protagonist quickly leaves the room, relieved that her imperial status was apparently not noticed. As she walks down the corridor, Charlotte hears an argument coming from one of the rooms, the subject being that they lost a lot of money to Lord Ian, who fled. Apparently, they are the ladies from that day at the confectionery. They even complain that Sweet Lady Blair was such a disloyal and traitorous woman, but this problem is not the protagonist's concern, and she simply leaves. However, the argument grows more heated, with the girls saying they will not let the girl get away with abandoning her friends to save her own skin. Because of that, the princess opens the door and sees the three surrounding her sister-in-law. She asks what is going on there. She is met with Blair's sad, tear-filled gaze. One of the girls is rude, saying that what is happening there is none of her business, not caring whom she is talking to. But that is something Charlotte will not let pass. She says that it is her business, since Blair is her sister-in-law. This makes one of the ladies provoke the younger Adler, saying, "Just because you are desperate does not mean you should cling to a rotten rope. Not all princesses are the same." Charlotte is also rude in return, saying that they lost a lot of money because they were too stupid to notice a scam, but at least they still have a sturdy rope to cling to. Her words offend the women, who think this is out of line for a princess. Charlotte does not care about that, since the three of them have gone too far by taking out their anger on the wrong person. Irritated, one lady says that they are in the right, since Blair promised to invest in the business and then backed out halfway through. Tired of this whole story, the irritated Adler girl reminds them that she had warned them to be cautious, because something did not seem right. Even so, the other continues provoking, saying that she had no idea her friend was so disloyal, and insinuates that she learned that from a certain person who cannot remain loyal to a man. After hearing that, the princess asks, "Are you sure you do not want to take that back?" And she asks whether she does not want to be accused of lèse-majesté, but the woman pretends not to understand, claiming that she did not name anyone. She even starts laughing, provoking her, confident that she will never be punished for being dishonest toward a noble. Charlotte remembers that there are other ways to punish someone by law besides formal legal means. The princess starts walking, which makes the other woman curious, wanting to know what she is doing. Without answering, the protagonist grabs one of the wine bottles, and with a frightening look, she threatens, "Don't you know that violence is faster than the law?" Leaving the three of them terrified at how the princess is a complete psychopath. They then run away, afraid of being hit. Now that only the two of them are left, Charlotte explains that she was not really going to use the bottle and was only trying to scare them. Blair thanks her for the help and for everything, since that business was indeed a fraud exactly as she had said, and it was revealed that Lord Ian, who planned it, was deeply in debt from gambling. Strangely, Charlotte asks her not to tell anyone about something, when suddenly the bottle slips from her hand. This startles the blonde girl, and Charlotte explains that her arm just became weak for a few seconds. At that moment, Duke Adler rushes into the room, almost out of breath, indicating that he had been running. He wants to understand what is going on there, and looking at the bottle, he asks the princess if she was the one who did that. Charlotte confirms that she did. Then Irenaeus wants to know what she was trying to do to his sister. Blair tries to explain, but he says that he saw her friends running away frightened and screaming, and right after that, he heard the sound of something breaking. And since he heard it with his own ears, he does not need an explanation. Since he only heard the sound, Charlotte understands that he could easily have misinterpreted the situation, so she still tries to tell the truth. But Adler is rude, asking if she is trying to lie again. After all, she just admitted that she broke the bottle. And he adds, "How can you stand there and lie when the mess in this room speaks for itself?" The young man asks her to stop lying. and says that he thought she had changed, but now believes that she can only hide her true nature for a certain amount of time. Charlotte can see in his eyes that he will not believe her no matter what she says. And she also thinks that he never really intended to believe her in the first place. So she leaves, even though she is the victim of that misunderstanding. In any case, it is a waste of time to talk to someone who is not even willing to listen. Charlotte is already outside, holding back her tears, since she did everything to help Blair, and understands that perhaps the Duke will hurt her because he does not like her. The princess holds the lace of her dress so as not to trip, and it is possible to notice her hands trembling. The thing is, she cannot go down, since her knees are almost giving out. So shaken, she does not even notice Jonathan's presence. The man asks how the dance was. Feeling weak, Charlotte says that she did not dance. He says she did not miss much, since it is just spinning around. Noticing her state and that she does not seem to want to go back to Duke Adler, the bodyguard suggests that she wait there while he goes to get the palace carriage. But since it is very dark outside, the princess prefers to go with him. And Jonathan takes the opportunity to tease her, saying that she might ask to be saved from a rabbit in the garden. His amusement is irritating her with that. Extending his arms, Sir Watson offers to carry her if she cannot walk. This surprises her, but Charlotte accepts, wanting to return as quickly as possible and rest. As the man carries her, the princess asks if she is very heavy. Jonathan says that it is actually the opposite, since he imagined that only her arms were fragile, but in truth she is light as a feather, seeming not to have a single part of her body that looks healthy. Noticing that she was being watched, Charlotte turns around. Duke Adler is there, staring at her with that same look as always. But Charlotte does not look at him for long because her bodyguard calls her. And he is honest in saying that the dress she tried on at the boutique the other day looked better, drawing a smile from her. The next day, Martha asks Her Highness if she is not going to write a letter to her fiancé, but the princess refuses. This makes the dark-haired maid find it strange since that used to happen every day. So curiously, she asks if they argued at the ball. The conversation is interrupted when Sir Watson rushes in, frightening the maid. Without much emotion, Charlotte makes it clear that she does not need protection that day, since she has no plans. But the man interrupts her, simply saying, "It's the 5th, obviously leaving her confused, not understanding what he means. It turns out that the 5th victim was found this morning, and surprisingly, the princess knows him. The victim is the commander of the Curtain Army, Lord Bridget. The Adler family is rich and prestigious, having as its main heir Irenaeus von Adler, or just Renius for short. Having inherited good genes from his parents, the boy grew up and became a man who attracts everyone's attention, always drawing praise, especially when he went to the Imperial Military Academy. But Renius's perfect life began to slowly go downhill. Once, he was informed that several young noblewomen had sent marriage proposals, to which the blonde replied that they should all be burned, putting his mother on alert. A young man who keeps the Duchess company greets her and takes his leave to step out, since her son has returned. The woman expresses her concern about her son's marriage and asks if there is any young lady he is interested in, but at the moment he is only focused on seeing her get better, and that part of his life can wait. With a sad look, his mother says that she would like to see him married before it is too late. Renius ends up breaking down, saying that she should not say such things. Thus, neither her wish nor Renius's came true. And when doubt arose in Blair about how they would live without a mother, soon their father was introducing a new one. He had met her when he was a commander of the Curtain Army. Renius realizes that at that time his mother was still healthy. His mother's death, his father's affair, and having a stepmother, all of these things made Renius's heart become cold and hardened. A few years later, his father passed away, and he stopped living as Renius and began living as Duke Adler, and his world grew darker. Then one day the Emperor summoned him, having a frank conversation and asking whether the mining rights had expired that year, thus finding an opening to say that he would like the young man to become engaged to his youngest daughter, if he had no objections. Remembering that she was the delinquent princess, Irenaeus was honest and accepted. Although far from being happy about marrying her, he did not oppose His Majesty. And so we arrive at that day of the first meeting, when Duke Adler made it clear that it was all an arranged marriage and that they should only meet again on the day of the ceremony, making it clear that there was no reason to meet before then. The truth is that Duke Adler is marrying her solely to maintain the mining rights. But the young man did not expect the princess to confess and say that they should have a date. For him, the marriage was already unsettling enough, and the delinquent still wanted that. If it were not for the rights, he would not be in this situation. Yet the more time they spent together, the more the princess seemed to fall in love, like when Charlotte was delighted to learn that she was his first love. That is why Irenaeus asked what she saw in him, and that girl's answer was, to say the least, shocking. After hearing every detail of how the princess admired him, the Duke realized that since she was so affectionate, it would be fair to return the favor. While admiring himself in the mirror, he asks his secretary whether he received what he requested. The man confirms that he bought tickets to the most popular opera among young people at the moment, and that they were premium tickets, having been paid at 3 times the original value. The moment of the meeting arrives. Charlotte, without the slightest shyness, said that she would rather sit beside him and have a friendly conversation than watch an expensive show, because she would be happy just looking at his face. The problem was that the Duke did not want her to know how shy she made him, and slightly flushed. After that, the princess ended up falling asleep. He had asked for premium tickets that cost more than the original, thinking the princess would enjoy the performance. But in the end, it did not go as planned, leaving the Duke to watch her sleeping with her head resting on his shoulder, continuing to be the same woman without class and without sophistication as always. His plan was that as soon as the music ended, he would push her head away, and it stayed that way for 5 more songs. To convince himself, the Duke thought about how the princess was leaning on her fiancé and not on just any man, remembering that her fatigue might be due to losing sleep thinking about him, as Charlotte had confided earlier. But he already has an idea to spare them from that unpleasant experience happening again, deciding to notify her in advance when they are going to meet, so that the princess can sleep properly. The period before the debutante ball was a disaster for Adler. Irritated, the man slams his hand on the table, thinking about how that wink he received at the banquet was adorable, and how it becomes even more so every time he remembers it. Irenaeus can even recall every single thing Charlotte said, like his hair shining like the spring sun and eyes that resemble a crystal-clear lake, slowly becoming addicted to the girl's compliments. The Duke also secretly keeps all the letters he received from her, begging to meet. Thus, the feeling of euphoria never faded, and the letters have become increasingly direct lately. His secretary enters the office, asking whether he will accept the invitation to Lady Morstan's ball. Irenaeus immediately makes it clear that he hates these kinds of social gatherings, but he ends up thinking it over, accepting and asking him to reserve a slot in his schedule for it, which leaves the man completely surprised, not knowing that the Duke did this because he thought Charlotte might want him as her partner. Before the man leaves, Irenaeus asks what it means when a woman says she wants a date somewhere more private, and using that typical line, "It's not for me, it's for a friend." The secretary cannot see any logic beyond wanting to have an intimate and private moment. Then he asks another question that shocks him even more. What does it mean when a woman says that her heart warms when she thinks of you? Leaving the man completely bewildered, thinking about the possibilities of what that could mean, and believing that things are happening far too fast for someone who has never been in a relationship. He says that the Duke's friend needs to prepare his heart. Another day passes, and as usual, the Duke reads his fiancée's letters. Still intrigued by her words, he wants at all costs to find out what the girl wants from him. But if it is something inappropriate, he will cut it off at the root, and he will do so by consulting a small noble guide to love and other matters. As expected, Charlotte did want him as her partner at the debutante ball, if he was not busy. Even so, it was inevitable that the Duke was left in shock at hearing this request with his own ears. The young man asks if she had not said that she was in love with him. Charlotte makes it clear that she simply does not want the man she's in love with to do something that makes him uncomfortable because of her, making the Duke think that the princess is considering going alone because she knows he does not like events like these. But her eyes shine when she confesses that she plans to go. She then explains that if he does not appear with his fiancée as his partner, it would destroy his reputation in high society. In the end, the Duke decides that from that moment on, he should make the invitation first, so he does not have to deal with this kind of drama. Then comes the princess's question, asking whether he would mind if she showed a bit of cleavage that day, making the Duke collapse at that. The next day, Duke Adler makes an unusual request. He wants a dress to be bought. The man is confused and asks if it is for Charlotte, and Irenaeus confirms that it is. After all, she is his fiancée, and it is perfectly acceptable on his part to give gifts like that. At that meeting, the girl confessed that she no longer had the budget for a new dress, but he makes it clear that the intention behind this is that the deadline for the mining rights is approaching, and he must show his loyalty to the imperial palace. Even without knowing what one thing has to do with the other, his loyal retainer will place the order for the dress and then have it sent. Duke Adler is surprised that before placing the order, it is he who must approve the dress design. Right away, he rejects one of the models. 2 more are rejected, until there are none left to evaluate. Determined to find something better, he goes out into the streets himself. His eyes widen when he notices something. A beautiful lilac dress with delicate details displayed in the shop window. A shy smile appears on his face, and Irenaeus marches toward the boutique. But upon arriving there, he discovers that the dress is already reserved for someone else. Ignoring what is said, he simply states that he will buy it. The saleswoman, trying to be careful when speaking to the Duke, praises his refined eye, but explains that Lady Whittaker already has it reserved, or at least is trying to. But without caring, the blonde simply insists that he will buy it, and uses the famous phrase, "Have you forgotten who you are talking to?" making even his most loyal man shudder. In addition to who he is the all-powerful owner of this building. Duke Adler then offers to pay 3 times the dress's value, which should be more than enough to cover the cancellation penalty, and showers of coins are given to her. After that, he tried to tell the princess at the morning banquet that he would give her a dress as a gift, but due to the unforeseen poisoning incident and the consequent closure of the palace, the Duke could not see his fiancée for some time. It was truly surprising that Charlotte played the most important role in preventing the Emperor's assassination. However, the most important fact was that the first person the princess looked at in the crowd was him, causing in Irenaeus an inexplicable feeling of satisfaction. And so, the long-awaited day of the debutante ball arrives, even though he was happy to have bought her a dress so that she would not show her cleavage. Even so, Charlotte received a lot of attention from the men, and that made him think about whether he should have bought something less eye-catching. Lord Bridget's appearance was irritating to him. He has had a strange jealousy toward Rhaenys since their days at the military academy, and it sends chills down the Duke's spine when he pretends to be his friend. Lord Bridget was tactless when he talked about Charlotte's gentle side, and said that if he had known, he would have asked her to marry him. Everything he says gets on the Duke's nerves, but at least he changes the subject and asks for permission to pull him aside. Charlotte accepted, not knowing that her fiancé wished she had refused. After all, isn't she in love? If only the princess had seemed a little upset, he could have used an excuse to stay there. As soon as they approach the other nobles, Bridget says, "I rescued him from the worst woman in the empire." People are surprised by his presence and even speculate that the princess caused a scene to bring him there. A woman whispers the gossip that the dress Charlotte is wearing was taken from Lady Whittaker. The true owner says she was so upset that she could not even sleep since it took a lot of effort to reserve that dress. And even so, the princess suddenly appeared at the boutique and demanded that it be given to her. Lady Whittaker was not in a position to disobey her, so she had no choice but to hand it over. And this generates unpleasant comments about Charlotte. Hearing all of this, Duke Adler wants to understand how the incident happened. She says that it happened while she was at the boutique and that if he had been there, he would have been horrified as well, claiming that the princess said horrible things, but this story does not seem true at all. Rhaenys insists that he asks her a question, but she continues insisting that she is telling the truth. That is, until her eyes widen when the Duke reveals that he was the one who bought the dress. With that intense, frightening look, the Duke says, "I bought this dress at the boutique, and as you said, my shameless lady, but if my memory does not fail me, you were not there." Lady Whittaker begins to stammer, trying to fix her lie, and says that she heard it from the boutique owner. Another hole in this lie is that the owner did not know who the dress was for, because he simply bought it and later gave it as a gift to the princess, making it clear that he understood the fact that she accepted the reservation being canceled, and with Charlotte appearing at the ball wearing it, she invented an absurd story. Lady Whittaker will not let this go, after all. In any case, Charlotte is the reason the dress was taken from her, the real victim here. What she did not count on is the fact that Rhaenys knows that, in addition to the boutique paying a penalty equivalent to the cost of the dress, they also provided a new one for free. And here he surprises everyone by saying that if she is going to lie, she should at least tell the story properly, because he will not tolerate anyone lying about his fiancé. All of this discussion causes a certain discomfort in the group. Although the lady had her dress taken, she still took advantage of the situation to create a malicious lie and further fuel Charlotte's bad reputation. Trying to calm things down, Lord Bridget says that the girl may have been mistaken, since the princess is well known for her bad taste and also for being a liar. Already disliking this man, Duke Adler does not hold back in saying that this is ironic coming from someone who is involved in all kinds of dirty activities in Cortina. The Lord defends himself, saying that he only did his job as a commander. Luckily, a girl steps into the middle of the group announcing the arrival of Archduke Killian, which ends up dragging everyone else away from the conflict, even pulling along the inconsolable Lady Whittaker. Duke Adler then looks toward a certain spot. It is the place where he left the princess, and she is no longer there, making him even think about the possibility that she also went after the heartthrob of the night. One of the nobles comments on the Archduke's popularity with women and then suggests that this be a moment just for the boys. Someone comments that Killian is quite naive. It is Bridget who says this, adding that if he has so many women clinging to him like that, he should enjoy himself a little, but he always pushes them away and never even touches them. But then he plants the idea that perhaps Killian has done it without anyone knowing. A sound of glass breaking echoes through the place when, upon hearing this, Duke Adler squeezes his glass with such force that it shatters. He says that the man has crossed the line by saying that to his face. Leaving everyone shocked, Bridget has the audacity to ask if he is defending the princess because she is his fiancée, remembering that he might even want to defend her, but that he is certain the girl is throwing herself at Archduke Killian at this very moment, as she always has. Renius calls out to him while delicately wiping his hand on a handkerchief, and declares that he will hold him responsible for what he just said. The dirty handkerchief is thrown at the jerk's feet. Duke Adler leaves without saying another word, but everything that was said leaves the man shaken. As he walks, Renius reflects on how tired he is of all this nonsense, and that if his partner were not a princess, he would never have appeared at this kind of event. Suddenly, he is forced to stop, having spotted his fiancée standing there, talking to the person he least wished it to be. In his view, Charlotte has that foolish, love-struck look as always, while Killian does not show much, but also does not seem to be hating the situation. But that is enough for Renius's eyes. Duke Adler does not even wait to see how it will all end, and heads off to a distant area to be alone, and takes the opportunity to reflect on a few facts, like Charlotte having tried to convince him not to go to the ball because Killian would be there. Then he remembers her saying that she had left her past behind and that now she only thought of him, as well as remembering Bridget saying with a big smile that Charlotte is known for lying about everything. Things begin to work in his mind. Suddenly, he hears the desperate screams of girls saying that the princess is a complete psychopath. He recognizes the girls as friends of his sister. Then, right after, comes the sound of something breaking from where the girls ran off in fear. Duke Adler rushes into the room, thus finding Charlotte and Blair, whose eyes are full of tears, and he notices the broken wine bottle between them. His sister trembles upon noticing his presence. Still trying to understand what is happening, Renius remains completely silent until he ends up snapping over it. He places himself in front of his sister and begins saying offensive things to Charlotte, making it clear that she cannot hide her true nature for long. The princess, in turn, merely lowers her head without even trying to defend herself. After hearing so many insults, she simply leaves, leaving even the Archduke confused. But Blair will not let things stay this way. The girl asks if her brother has gone mad to be acting like that, and he merely tells her to be careful with her tone of voice, since they are not in their home. She says that the princess saved her while she was suffering at the hands of those girls, and that the bottle fell by accident, then questions how her brother reprimanded Charlotte without even listening to an explanation. All the Duke can do is ask why this is only being said now. Crying heavily, the girl reminds him that she would have explained if he had not refused to listen and had simply said whatever he wanted and made her leave. Now she does not know how she will be able to face the princess. It is at that moment that Duke Adler runs out to fix the great mess he caused, running outside, having time to find her still standing at the top of the staircase. Renius intends to explain his behavior to her and apologize for the misunderstanding, but at that moment, a man arrives and carries his fiancée away. This is not pleasant at all to his eyes. Charlotte even notices him there, and their gazes meet, only for her to look away right after, thus leaving while being carried. After the incident, a few days pass. Charlotte usually writes daily, but it has been days since he received any letters. Now he feels like the biggest idiot in the entire world. That day, Blair shouted at her brother, saying that the princess must be fed up with him, and that if she were in her place, she would never want to look at his face again. For him, not much has changed, since in any case, they would not see each other again until the wedding day. And he tries to convince himself that if she stops being in love, it will make no difference. It does not matter anymore. His secretary rushes into the office in a panic. Renius wants to know what is so urgent that he would enter without even knocking. The Duke's eyes light up when he hears that it is a letter from the princess. Trying not to show too much interest, he asks whether all the commotion is about that. It turns out that the letter says that Princess Charlotte is currently in police custody. A few hours before Renius ran out of the house in a panic, the princess was discussing the crime that had happened that morning. According to information brought by Jonathan, the killing was carried out in the same way as the other four, so the police quickly concluded that it was the work of the serial killer. Sir Watson also confirms her suspicion that it was a well-built man at least 180 centimeters tall, and to him this makes sense since such a person would be capable of overpowering and strangling Commander Bridget, who had received rigorous formal military training. All of this makes Charlotte think that she should not have stopped her investigation just because her feelings were hurt. The location of the incident is where Jonathan was born and raised, but it is not a place where nobles are welcome. It is Norwood Street, a slum full of beggars and criminals, considered the dark side of the glamorous imperial capital. At least the victim's body is probably at the precinct's morgue. So the protagonist asks whether it would be suspicious for an imperial princess to request to see the body of a victim, making the man widen his eyes, suspecting that she wants to go see it in person. That thought does cross Charlotte's mind, since it is the most crucial piece of evidence in a homicide case. But Jonathan answers her question, saying that it would indeed be suspicious, and makes it clear that he also does not understand why she is investigating these cases, but all she says is that she hired him on the condition that he help without questioning, and so tells him not to try to understand it. Charlotte asks whether the police station has holding cells, giving a small, devilish smile for her next plan. Martha's clothes fit the princess well, and it goes without saying that the dark-haired maid has no idea that some of her clothes were borrowed. The protagonist asks whether she still looks like Charlotte, to which Jonathan replies that no one would expect to find a princess in a slum. Once already at the place, she asks Sir Watson to stay there, keeping his eyes on her, and only to follow when she is taken by the police. Charlotte opens the bottle of wine, then pours all the liquid straight into her mouth. It does not take long for the drink to take effect and for her to start running around wildly. It only takes 30 minutes for her plan to work. As the officer arrests her, he says, "You really should rethink your life choices, young lady. Broad daylight and you're already drunk." To them, it is unbelievable that something so thin can make so much noise. Anyone who causes emotional or physical distress to those around them through aggressive words or actions while drunk is placed in a holding cell under imperial law. Charlotte followed this idea because it is a minor offense for which she can easily be released by paying a small bail and having a guarantor confirm her identity. At least the emperor will not find out. She starts yelling at the officer, demanding to know why he sent her there and saying they will regret this. The man begins lecturing her, saying that getting drunk and causing a scene in a neighborhood like this is a terrible idea, especially since someone was killed that very morning. Still acting, the princess says that it is a lie, and that they are just trying to scare her. The officer says that the victim's body is right next door, finally giving her the information she wants. Soon the princess asks to go to the bathroom, which does not please the man very much, so she has to appeal further, asking if he will clean it if she wets herself. But Charlotte's plans begin to go wrong when the man refuses to let her out. The princess demands to speak to his superior and continues with the famous line, "Do you know who I am? I had dinner with your boss just yesterday. We even went to a sauna. We had tea." Charlotte makes an even bigger scene, saying she is about to pee herself and asking whether he will clean it, eventually making the man give in to her whims. This was quite easy since she used to deal with all kinds of criminals. Having even more luck that day, the morgue is not far from the bathroom, which greatly facilitates her plan. The officer says he needs to return to the crime investigation and asks the girl to do her little business and leave, warning her not to run away until her guarantor arrives. Fragile, drunk ladies are usually not kept under strict surveillance, especially since everyone is busy with the major problem of the day. Charlotte escapes during her trip to the bathroom and slowly opens the morgue door, peeking inside. Realizing that it is empty, she enters the room. What she is looking for is right there. The protagonist approaches and lifts the sheet covering the deceased. Her eyes widen at what she sees. At first glance, the mark of the crime is visible, indicating how Lord Bridget was killed. Activating her instincts from her past life, the protagonist begins to analyze the condition of the body, noticing that there are no signs that the commander tried to defend himself, and his face is immaculate. Aside from the paleness, it is almost the same as the last time she saw him, which is strange for a man with military training not to have tried to defend himself at all. However, red blotches are noticeable on other parts of his body. This is an overdose reaction. It did not take long for the protagonist to understand that Bridget was poisoned and then made to look as if he had been strangled. She does not know how it works or how advanced forensic science is in this world, but the police were completely fooled by the killer. Outside the room, Charlotte takes time to think about why the criminal would try to falsify the cause of death. In the middle of the corridor, she ends up bumping into a police officer who notices that she is still a bit unsteady and asks, worried, whether she has not yet recovered. The box he is carrying catches the princess's attention. He explains that they are very busy with major cases like this one and cannot deal with something as small as her. Then he asks the girl to remain quiet and sober until then. But things become complicated for Charlotte because Jonathan cannot be her guarantor. To her, this makes no sense, since even common people can be guarantors in minor crimes. But Sir Watson reminds her that he is not just a commoner, but also a criminal on parole after she herself got him out of prison. Charlotte panics, not knowing what to do or whether there is anyone else who could help, which she quickly dismisses. Since if the Imperial Palace finds out about this, the budget increase she fought so hard for will be completely cut, until she remembers that there is someone who is not from there and who would still come to get her out. But she does not have many options if she wants to leave, so she asks Jonathan to send a letter in her name. And soon the Count arrives, completely exhausted and drenched in sweat. He then looks at his fiancée. Ranius wants an explanation of what is going on and with a broad smile lets out a compliment, saying that she looks great even soaked in sweat. And we have to agree. Once again, the man asks what she is doing there, and the princess simply says that she is sitting in a cell, as he can see. However, the Duke is not in the mood for jokes and asks if she was really arrested for public drunkenness, and wonders if that, in her mind, is a wig. Charlotte responds with great charm. Sometimes a girl just wants to let loose. Getting to the point, Charlotte asks him to get her out, since he is already there anyway, and of course, without telling anyone who she is. The police officers soon arrive and are surprised by the presence of His Grace there. While the men interact, the princess simply observes the irony, since they are standing in front of the murderer they are looking for. The chaotic situation is that a police station is involved in an investigation, with a woman detained for public drunkenness and her fiancé confirming her identity to get her out, pretending not to be the criminal. Anyone would be nervous going to the place where their crime is being investigated, but Charlotte thinks this is not a big deal for a serial killer. In any case, Rhenius resolves everything for her release. The two walk side by side, both somewhat uncomfortable. Then the princess breaks the silence, thanking him for what he did, since she could not think of anyone else to turn to. After all, despite everything, he is still her fiancé. Duke Adler surprises her by asking if she is hurt, since she had imagined that he would criticize her and once again throw it in her face that she can only hide her true nature for a certain time. Charlotte simply replies that she is fine, leaving him relieved. The protagonist regrets having called him that way and is about to say goodbye, but Rhenius interrupts her, saying that he had to clear his schedule because of her, and it is not as if he could schedule something else. Without any ceremony, the Duke invites her on a date, catching his fiancée completely by surprise, especially since it is right after he got her out of jail, this being the proper way to enjoy a meal. Finally alone, it is the perfect moment for them to talk, and Rhenius takes the opportunity to ask what the girl was doing in that place. Charlotte says she had heard about a famous pub on Norwood Street, but she knew that if a princess were seen drinking heavily in a place like that, it would be very problematic. The protagonist needs to be convincing. Acting like a true delinquent princess, she says that life can be stressful sometimes, with moments when one can feel hurt and frustrated, and she explains that she wanted to get drunk because it would help her forget her pain for a bit, then asks if he never has moments like that. Adler is straightforward, saying that he has never drunk to the point of getting drunk, so he cannot relate to that, making her feel strange and apologize for the inconvenience she caused. Deep down, the girl cannot wait to change the subject, since the excuse she used now seems terrible. Rhenius surprises her once again that day by asking if it was because of him that she felt hurt enough to get drunk. He says he regrets how he behaved at Lady Morstan's debutante ball. Showing sadness over what happened, he admits that he made a big mistake that day and apologizes for judging the situation poorly and acting improperly. Even if it feels late, he thanks her for helping Blair. Saying those words was difficult for the young man. He even looks away, embarrassed. Charlotte says that Blair is his sister, and since they are about to become a family, she would obviously help her. The princess does not understand what is going on with him. There was something very disturbing about Charlotte to Rhenius, but nothing happened when the real one was involved. The carriages that were usually available had somehow been used by his sister and stepmother that day. It would take about 30 minutes for a new carriage to be ready. He could not wait that long. He needed to get to the shameless woman who had asked him to get her out of a cell as quickly as possible. The Duke ran until he found one available, finding the delinquent princess on the dirty floor of a cell, wearing simple clothes that an ordinary person would wear, and with a clean face without any trace of makeup. Yet the Duke wondered why this ridiculous woman suddenly seemed cute. He had no doubt that being out of breath from running so much was preventing him from thinking clearly. But what truly distressed him was the fact that his fiancée had been accused of public drunkenness. Talking with his secretary, Rhenius comments on how Charlotte suddenly stopped sending letters after writing one every day, and asks whether that could mean she wants to end the relationship. Even without knowing what the Duke did, the man says he has heard that when people are about to break up with their lovers, they may change their hair or consume large amounts of alcohol. So he imagined that Charlotte ended up in that situation because he acted like an idiot at the ball. Then she ended up confessing that, leaving him completely shocked. This was the first apology of his life, and Charlotte graciously forgave him. Adler felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his chest, and now he began to feel a jump of excitement. Perhaps the princess was someone who understood him completely, yet he felt that it might be good to tell her something that had been bothering him and that he had never told anyone before. Rhenius reveals that he did not want to come because the last time he was at the restaurant, he had a bad experience. The protagonist is surprised by his words and wonders if the young man is about to confess memories of crimes. At her request, he begins to tell what happened 2 months earlier, when the head chef ignored his request and cooked the steak medium instead of well done, because that way it enhanced the flavor better. Indeed, the man went too far, even if he had only prepared the steak differently. But there is something else Adler needs to tell. His secret is that when he smells the metallic scent of red fluid, he begins to panic. So even though it was just the steak, it was unbearable and almost made him lose control in front of Blair and his stepmother that day. Charlotte cannot believe that a serial killer who graduated from the military academy with honors panics over something like that. He asks the girl not to look at him with such compassion. When his mother was vomiting her own fluids as she was dying, he was right beside her. Since that day, whenever he smells it, it becomes hard to breathe because the memories come rushing back to him. With this confession, Charlotte understands that this is the reason he did not enlist in the Imperial Army after graduating from the academy, and the young man confirms that he could not serve under those conditions. Renius continues to open up and reveals that he even wondered whether his mother would still be alive if he had stayed instead of going to the academy. After all, his father was not a good caretaker for her. Charlotte laments the loss and, curious, asks whether anyone else knows. But she is the only one who knows, which makes her want to ask why he told her this. Yet even he himself is not sure of the reason. Then he says, maybe it's because we're about to become a family. Charlotte calls for the waiter and asks for her steak well done as well. Duke Adler says she doesn't need to do that for his sake since it's not so severe that he would smell the fluid on someone else's plate, and she replies that she simply wants her meat that way today. He thought she wouldn't be able to enjoy it as much if it were well done, but to Charlotte, meat is delicious no matter how it's prepared. The protagonist understands that witnessing the death of a parent is difficult for anyone, and the villain of this novel is no exception. One day, on the way back from an amusement park trip they had saved up for, her family suffered an accident that completely destroyed their small car. She was the only survivor, and her thought was that if she hadn't begged to be taken to that park, no one would have suffered. And the girl remembers the days she spent drowning in guilt. Charlotte wonders if Adler has ever had nights like that. The princess says that none of this was his fault. Touching the Duke's hand, she tells him not to feel that way. After the end of that meeting, already at night, Charlotte is in the Imperial Palace. Lying in bed, she reflects that she should not grow personally attached to someone she is investigating, but in the end, she ended up comforting him. Her head is spinning, and she wonders what is wrong. But now is not the time for that, since she knows that the cause of the victim's death was forged. The protagonist intends to summarize her findings from the infiltrated investigation at the police station, since she discovered that Lord Bridget was actually poisoned. Another pattern is forming, with 2 other victims having suffered the same fate. However, it seems that someone is trying to recreate this using poison and pretending that a rope was used. Even without being able to examine the others, some things don't add up, such as the common knot that was clearly different from the one the serial killer used. Since all 5 victims had the same knot, it is highly likely they were made by the same person. So if it was poisoning instead of strangulation, this eliminates the need for the criminal to be a tall man with a large build. The princess remembers that a few days ago Blair told her something important about the first victim. The girl said that her brother dismissed the maid with the argument that she was not taking her work seriously enough, and she obviously lamented that something so cruel happened to her after she became Lady Morston's governess. Taking this into account, and also the chef who cooked Duke Adler's steak differently without permission, both victims are linked to him in some way and also angered him. The protagonist wonders whether this is reason enough for a crime. Despite Renius having a cold personality, she doubts he would kill someone over something like that. But the reason Charlotte suspected her fiancé as the culprit in the first place was the introduction to the novel, which she only read briefly, and now she begins to question what if he is not the real murderer? Then if not him, who would it be? Another day of banquet arrives, reminding her of the last one that ended brutally due to the attempted multiple killings, but the Emperor is happy that they resolved it so they can gather once again. Thus, the morning banquet begins. Alert to everything around her, it doesn't take long for Charlotte to realize that apparently Camilla is plotting something. And it doesn't take long to discover that it is because Marquise Dost is there, one of the people influenced by the redhead. Soon the man is called to speak, saying that he wishes to ask for advice. Letting slip some questionable words, he says that they are receiving complaints that the Empire's legal system is incapable of fully resolving certain issues, and so he wants to know the pros and cons of a certain change. He then directs this to Charlotte, wanting to know her opinion on the matter. If the plan was to bring down the princess, they just gave her the best ammunition. Inspired, she is ready to begin. Minutes pass as Charlotte presents her opinion, which generates murmurs among those present. After it ends, Marquis Dost says that he has nothing to add because her answer was brilliant. And of course, the Emperor is proud of his daughter, drawing generous praise. Charlotte smiles gratefully to Camilla's misfortune since she tried to use the protagonist's area of expertise to harm her once again, without knowing that small detail. A list of official imperial events scheduled for the near future is handed to His Majesty. Reading the paper, the emperor is surprised to see that it is time for the Imperial Confederation banquet. This is an annual event where high officials and leaders of Asgard's vassal states gather to promote harmony among the countries under its rule and strengthen their alliances. But in reality, it is merely a place for Asgard's vassal states to demonstrate their loyalty to the emperor. The man explains that, due to the recent incident, Cortina has been excluded from the attendance list. Overcome by arrogance, the emperor orders that this year's event be the grandest of all. Before leaving with these orders, there is still one matter to settle. He asks whether they should hold Princess Camilla's birthday celebration in his palace again this year. But the emperor rejects it, saying it will be held in the Redhead's own palace, because this year the one to receive that honor will be Charlotte. This shocking revelation causes gossiping murmurs to rise once again, and of course, this does not please Camilla, who is completely against it. However, the emperor has given his final word and stands up, unwilling to hear his daughter's complaints. Charlotte remains standing there, still not understanding what has just happened. Birthday celebrations for princes and princesses usually take place in their own palaces, but every year the emperor chooses one child to have the party at his palace, and Camilla had been chosen for many years, being considered the most likely to inherit the crown. On the day of the poisoning incident, Prince Felipe commented that if Charlotte had not discovered it in time, Camilla would have been the only sibling left with everything. There is no definitive proof, but the protagonist believes that this situation gave the emperor a reason to distrust her even more, especially as he is very concerned about those involved behind the scenes. Even so, it is not as if Charlotte asked her father for this, so there is no reason to be angry at her. At that moment, her thoughts are interrupted when Renius appears boldly, talking about their date for the day. He even asks if she has forgotten. As they walk side by side, the princess remarks that she was surprised that the Duke was the one who spoke first. But now, knowing that he may not be the culprit, she does not know what to say to him, yet it is the young man who breaks the silence. Renius comments that he noticed how knowledgeable she is about the law and curiously asks if she studied it in her free time, and she simply replies that it was her field of study. That catches his attention, so the protagonist refines her answer, saying it was just the main focus of her studies, always catching the princess by surprise. Duke Adler invites her to be his partner at this year's Imperial Confederation banquet. Charlotte is left speechless. As if trying to avoid a refusal, Renius explains that he really likes this event, and that is why she does not need to worry about him feeling uncomfortable attending. Charlotte believes this is because of that time she said he did not need to be her partner. In any case, she ends up accepting the request, leaving the young man delighted. Taking advantage of the moment, Renius asks if there is anything else she has to say to him, but Charlotte denies it, finding his behavior strange. In truth, she has no idea what is wrong with him, since he has been acting very differently. Not just that day. Still, this makes her suspect that there might be something she usually says that ended up being forgotten. The princess draws his attention, saying that there is something on his cheek. Then she answers, "It's beauty." No one was expecting that. It was just a guess, since Charlotte was not very sure whether he actually expected a compliment, and she half panics, realizing that perhaps the young man sees her as a machine meant to feed his ego. In fact, she wonders how this silly guy could be a serial killer. Duke Adler decides to change the subject. He comments that he heard her dress was taken during Lady Morstan's reception, but Charlotte asks him not to worry, since it was her mistake. However, the young man intends to compensate her, since it was an unfortunate incident that happened while she was helping his younger sister, and this new dress will be a gift to be worn at the Imperial Union banquet. The princess asks if that is really fine, mentioning that besides the increased budget of her palace, she also has dresses she designed herself and never wore. But the Duke reminds her that the grand event includes representatives from other countries, and therefore he insists that his partner wear the best. This causes a small confusion, with the protagonist asking if her dresses are not good enough, and he then tries to fix the situation by saying he will buy it from Emmers, the best boutique in the Empire. Renius also says that he made a mistake at the last party and therefore cannot live with that sense of debt, while Charlotte thinks that, as a state minister, the young man will meet many people who might not like the idea of seeing his partner in worn clothing. However, as far as she knows, it is difficult to get a reservation at Emmers even as a VIP, so she agrees to let the Duke make the reservation, but prefers to pay for it herself. At least that leaves him satisfied, and he accepts the idea, and she understands it as the young man simply wanting her to wear appropriate clothes. Back at the palace, Martha becomes enthusiastic upon hearing about the reservation. For the princess, however, it does not matter much. But the brunette does not care about that low energy, being very excited because she wants to make sure everyone knows the princess's status, since even the birthday banquet will be held at the Imperial Palace. She asks whether she will finally be able to put an end to the insolence of Camilla's servants, and takes the opportunity to share some gossip, saying that for some reason the redhead was unable to secure a reservation at the Amer's boutique. However, the girl's moment is interrupted when Jonathan asks whether nobles usually buy dresses every time there is an event. The young man is standing there, just listening to everything. Martha tells the sir to keep his rude comments to himself and not say them in front of the princess. Charlotte interrupts them and comments that she did not even get to wear the dress she bought, but the maid understands this as if the princess were still living in her amnesia state, since as far as she knows, Charlotte never wears the same outfit twice. Deep down, it is only the protagonist's soul that reminds her of poverty. Charlotte throws herself onto the bed, already tired, imagining how much she still has to do ahead, since choosing a dress does not take just one day. Seeing her sloppy manners, Martha asks her to maintain her dignity, but the princess does not care much since it is only them there. Charlotte then looks at Jonathan. Noticing that the look is directed at him, he ends up blushing. At last, the young man turns to leave, saying that he has a lot of work to do and that he will return at the scheduled time the next day. The princess simply watches him leave. After he leaves, the girl remembers the conversation they had. Sir Watson researched Marquis Bridget, whose last public appearance was at the debutante ball, where he was the man the princess met, and it was not pleasant at all. Curious, Jonathan asks whether that unpleasant encounter had anything to do with the Duke. In any case, all of this irritated her. Another comment from Watson is that there were remarks about an unpleasant atmosphere between the Marquis of La Maria and Duke Adler that day. The young man realizes that the girl did not know much about it. But in any case, since that day, no one has seen the Marquis again. And as they already know, something probably happened to him. And once again, it is someone who had a small issue with Duke Adler. The only thing the protagonist cannot understand is why one of the nobles who rose in status within the Imperial Army appeared in Norwood. Jonathan's guess is that he went to meet a human trafficking gang based on the location. After all, the Marquis does not have a very clean reputation, and after joining the Imperial Army, he achieved great feats and became a leader in Cortina, being notorious for his harsh treatment of the local inhabitants. From what is known, war orphans were recently brought in, and it is said that they are involved in selling people as slaves within the Empire. Aware of the whole situation, Charlotte asks whether the Empire is not monitoring what is happening, which Sir Watson confirms, even though it is illegal and very inhumane. This causes a feeling of outrage in the man, since nobles of the Empire cannot be punished without proof. After all, the laws of the Empire are cruel only to common people. Changing the subject, Jonathan asks whether she examined the body at the morgue that day. Smiling, Charlotte confirms that the work was completed. However, she says she is only there to take a look at the files and comments that, as expected, the body was truly horrifying. The truth is that she still has no reason to reveal what was found, so she lies to her bodyguard. The protagonist also took the opportunity to look up records about the man. She discovers that as a military investigator on duty, John was working on a case involving atrocities committed by Marquis Brigitte against the people of Cortina, and that he presented it to his superior, Captain Kensington, in London. But the man ordered everything to be covered up, and when Watson refused to obey, a gun was pointed at him. Feeling threatened, John subdued the captain and was eventually taken to trial for assaulting his superior. The Marquis was the one who testified against the investigator during the trial. Because of this, there is a possibility that John also harbors negative feelings toward Brigitte and thus enters the list of suspects who could have committed the crime, so her decision not to say anything is certain. Given this, no one is completely trustworthy. After reflecting on this, the princess heads to the boutique, where she is warmly received. The trio is together, and Martha, as always, is excited about the reservation at Immerse, while the shopkeeper explains that she was instructed by Duke Adler himself to give special attention to Her Highness. Thus, the woman is ready to show the best dresses in the store. Charlotte is only concerned about whether the budget is sufficient, but the brunette convinces her that she cannot give up and must buy it even if it means delaying Sir Watson's salary. The princess tries on several dresses, each one more beautiful than the last. While the girls are excited, Jonathan is not very enthusiastic about this kind of task. Finally, Charlotte decides on a dress, and since it is the most expensive in the boutique, she regrets not having accepted when the Duke said he would buy it. The bill barely arrives and the princess already feels bad, imagining the total cost. She even looks at it with only one eye, afraid. However, she ends up surprised to discover that it is less than half the price of the dress she bought last time, so she asks whether it is really correct. Even with the shopkeeper confirming it, such a low price still does not make sense. And despite not understanding much about it, it still seems strange. The woman explains that everything is correct and says that, even as a merchant, she can manage a low-income business project. All Charlotte can do is accept it. The purchase is finalized with the promise that it will be sent to the palace, and the princess leaves the boutique with a feeling of unease. As soon as they step outside, it starts to rain. They still need to stop by the convenience store where the reservation was made, and Charlotte intends to go like this, only asking that a carriage be called. Jonathan stops her, asking whether she plans to walk around all day under these conditions, with the risk of getting sick and developing a fever, not to mention that her body is weak. Sir Watson asks her to wait there while he goes to fetch an umbrella and a carriage to take them, which makes the girl think it is unfair for him to go out into the rain like that. But the young man reminds her that he was a soldier, and walking in the rain is not a big problem. Jonathan then runs off, leaving the girls waiting. Martha even praises him, saying that despite his rough manner, she believes the young man is completely sincere, prompting the princess to comment that she chose her assistants well. Soon, the brunette voices her concern that Jonathan is not someone whose inner thoughts are known, and that is why the princess does not show him much affection, especially since his contract ends after the marriage to the Duke. Charlotte agrees, since in the end the young man is loyal in truth to the money he receives. The two change the subject, talking about how strange the price of the dress was. Then Charlotte promptly accuses Duke Adler of having done something. She is surprised by the young man's presence. Upon hearing the voice, Charlotte immediately turns around, finding herself face to face with Renius. He says, "I see the princess talks a lot about me when I'm not around." A bit embarrassed at being caught, Charlotte denies it and thanks him, saying that thanks to him she managed to get a beautiful dress. The Duke is pleased that she succeeded and asks whether she is waiting for the rain to stop. Charlotte confirms that she is waiting for her carriage there, but curiosity arises and she asks what he is doing there. Being the owner of almost everything in the empire, he says that this building belongs to the Duchy of Adler, and that he is there because something happened. So he had no idea he would happen to meet the princess by chance. But this coincidence is very strange, making a reservation at a boutique located in a building he owns and then appearing at the scheduled time, and it raises suspicion that he might be watching her. There are still many doubts about the details, but the Duke remains the main suspect, and while he pretends to care, he may be looking for an opportunity to eliminate her. Still, Charlotte keeps her fake smile and agrees that everything is nothing more than a twist of fate. Renius seems pleased by this. His secretary appears, informing him that it is time for them to leave. This is the first time Charlotte and Alfred meet, and the man respectfully greets Her Highness. What catches Charlotte's attention is that the young man must know the places the Duke goes. Thus, she plans to extract information from him, but seeing that look from his fiancé, Renius completely misunderstands it and pushes his secretary aside, ordering him to fetch the carriage. Duke Adler then turns to Charlotte, asking if she has some problem with his secretary, since she would not be interested in him otherwise. Charlotte, of course, denies it, but the suspicion does not fade. Adler wants to understand what that look was, but the princess denies anything, saying she has eyes only for him. It is as if the Duke is trying to read her mind, and in the end, the young man blushes at the answer he received. The three of them remain there in a corner, sheltering from the rain while waiting for their carriages. The Duke leans closer, taking a look at his fiancée. Then he hands her his umbrella. Renius says he needs to go because of an appointment, and he steps into the rain, making his secretary rush after him in desperation. Martha sees this gesture as something very romantic, but what Charlotte's eyes catch is something terribly different from that. The knot tied in the cord holding the umbrella catches her attention. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Renius asks the man not to make a fuss just because a little rain soaked him. Alfred reminds him of the meeting with the president of the Imperial Bank and asks if he is not worried, but confidently the blonde says it is not as if it will fail just because his jacket is a little wet. Renius shoots the man a serious look, questioning whether he has become too casual lately, but the young man denies it, reminding him that he was not the one who changed clothes twice that morning. He even hints that the visit to the building was to see the princess, but Renius retorts that his secretary has developed the bad habit of assigning meanings to his actions as he pleases. Changing the subject, the Duke asks whether he handled the matter at the boutique, and thus we discover that, as suspected, it was the Duke who covered the price of the dress, with Charlotte being charged only 10%. The staff were instructed to tell the princess that the amount was normal, as well as to reject all reservations from everyone else in the Imperial League, all of this so that, in the end, he would not receive any rent payment for 1 year. But he does not mind that, since he managed to do what he wanted anyway and still allow his fiancée to pay for the dress as she wished. Renius remembers Charlotte saying that they met because of destiny, and that brings a small smile to his face. The Duke is satisfied that, out of the entire Imperial League, the only person wearing an emerald dress will be Princess Charlotte. Then we return to her, who is still waiting for her bodyguard. Jonathan returns, bringing the news that there were not many shops where he could buy an umbrella. After all, it started raining suddenly. He barely finishes his sentence when something catches his attention. finally noticing that Charlotte is holding an umbrella, and Martha explains the whole situation, finding the action quite cute. Watson, in turn, comments, "It seems sweet enough to be a coincidence. The carriage is also there to take them." Charlotte thanks him for bringing her the umbrella and orders him to use it, but it does not help him much, since he is already soaked. The young man asks for what she is holding, promising to put it away once inside the carriage. He unties the knot and then opens it. Sometime later, what was already expected happens. Charlotte is impressed by her situation, since not even dogs catch colds in the summer. The protagonist knows that this body is weak, but she wonders if there might be something wrong with the way the umbrella was tied. She thinks she did not see when that cord was tied. Realizing her own intention, she wonders why she is making excuses for the Duke, trying to understand whether she does not want the blonde to be the culprit, but she knows that seeing the man's human side a few times does not change the fact that he may be the main suspect. Meanwhile, Martha is worried about Her Highness's high fever. Not caring much about her condition, Charlotte only wants to know whether a letter was sent to Blair, apologizing for the tea meeting they were supposed to have. Suddenly, a maid appears, informing them that a guest has come to see the princess. Always attentive, Martha herself reminds them that the princess had sent apologies for her scheduled commitments. It turns out that the guest in question is Duke Adler. Of course, the brunette finds it romantic that he is visiting her while she is sick and is ready to bring him to the room, while Charlotte tries to understand how her fiancé knew he should come. In any case, Duke Adler enters the room, and he is surprised by the state the princess is in. Charlotte apologizes for being seen in such a disheveled condition. After composing himself, Rhaenys says she has nothing to apologize for, and that he is the one who should apologize for coming to her room without prior arrangement, while the princess says it is fine, explaining that she cannot receive him properly because of her condition. Even so, the Duke wants to justify himself so there will be no misunderstanding. He says he is not the kind of man who invades a woman's room without reason, but Charlotte did not misunderstand, since she does not think it is a big deal if someone enters her room, which leaves her fiancé shocked. He even tries to hide it, having previously considered the possibility that someone else had done so before. Changing the subject, the girl asks what he is doing there, since they do not have a meeting scheduled, and shortly after she begins to cough. Worried, Rhaenys asks if she is all right, and she says she will be fine, that it is just a cold. The princess is curious to understand the reason he is there. Duke Adler seems a little nervous. All of this is to say that the reason he is there is to retrieve the umbrella he lent her. That is something Charlotte did not expect, leaving her completely shocked. Duke Adler tries to justify it by saying it is a special umbrella, but the protagonist soon realizes this might be an excuse. After all, why would the Duke come personally just to retrieve an object? Not to mention that the young man has been looking around since he arrived, so she believes he is there to explore the princess's palace, since a criminal always does this before committing a crime. In any case, Charlotte points to where the umbrella is, saying that she had planned to return it personally. Rhaenys asks why she no longer sends him letters. Charlotte explains that since he gives notice when they will meet, she does not want to irritate him anymore by sending letters every time. But she is surprised when the Duke says that it is not irritating, that in fact he was eager to receive them, and he says that if she had informed him by letter that she was sick, he would not have shown up like this. Charlotte says that next time she will let him know, thinking that this situation is also partly her fault. The coughing from earlier returns, and this bout leaves the Duke very worried. Immediately, Rhaenys goes to her, ignoring her requests for him to keep his distance for fear of making him sick as well. But he needs to get closer to pick something up, to the point that others might worry about him being in her room. Now close, he notices something in his fiancé's hair. It is just a piece of handkerchief. Still surprised, Charlotte thanks him for this noble gesture. At least she reassures herself that the Duke will not try to eliminate her there, since there are many witnesses. Charlotte is pulled from her thoughts when the Duke grabs her wrist, noting that her body is weak. Then he says something strange. "It seems like your wrist would break if I even squeezed it." He also notices that her pulse is very fast, and the princess soon says it is because of the cold. Rhaenys tells her of a saying that one recovers from a cold by passing it on to another person, like a fiancé. He says he can do that. Charlotte is startled by this closeness and wants to know what he intends to do. But whatever the Duke intended to do is interrupted when Martha enters with the tea. The princess tries to play it off, while the young man simply steps back. Deep down, she is still nervous about what happened moments before. Martha draws her attention by asking if she saw the beautiful bouquet the Duke brought. Looking at the lovely flowers, the princess asks if they are for her, and Rhaenys confirms it, saying he picked them up along the way. The Duke says that he picked them from his garden, making the princess wonder if this is a joke. Rhaenys says that he has already finished the business he came for, so he will leave and asks her to take care of herself. It is surprising to Charlotte that her murderer is telling her to take care, but before the Duke leaves, she calls out to him. But it is too late, and the Duke forgets his umbrella. Realizing that it was obvious this whole story was a lie, now alone, the princess asks for the flowers to be placed in the living room, explaining to the maid that only beautiful things should stay together. In truth, she knows that some flowers are highly toxic, especially when they are brightly colored like these, considering the possibility that this could be the poison that would eliminate her. The protagonist throws herself back onto the bed, finally able to rest, but not for long. Jonathan enters the room, sees the girl sick, and uses the famous phrase, "I warned you." As for the Duke, a few hours earlier he had been informed about the princess's health. It was Blair who informed him, since she received a notice that the tea meeting had been cancelled. Duke Adler feels offended that his sister received the news and not him. Even after the princess declared her love, the two talk about it, and the girl wants to know if he is going to do something. Blair encourages him to at least bring flowers, after all he is her fiancé, but the Duke thinks it is rude to visit a lady without notice. But that does not matter to her, as she asks how everyone can be so uninformed about a woman's feelings, explaining that when the body is sick, emotions become weaker, and that a woman in such a state expects the man she likes to be by her side. She advises her brother to go and catch a cold as well, since it disappears if the illness is passed on to another person. This was the saying she heard from the ladies at the academy. Renius sighs and says he will talk to Alfred to fit it into his schedule. The problem is that he has a lot of overdue work, and it is not a day they were supposed to meet, so he does not want the princess to misunderstand, not to mention that it would be difficult if someone were to mistakenly think that he likes her. So sometime later, Renius arrives at the princess's palace. After all, he is her fiancé, and of course he can visit without a reason. And upon finding her, he sees the state of her health. He immediately remembers what Blair and Alfred explained about the process of transmitting a cold. That is why he approached Charlotte. But at that moment, he was interrupted by Martha. Only then did he come to his senses, that all of this had been madness. Suddenly, someone approaches and greets him. It is Charlotte's bodyguard, whom Renius recognizes as the man who carried his fiancée that day, and also the person he encountered a few times at the military academy and heard was extraordinarily talented despite being a commoner. So this is the person who entered Charlotte's room. Renius stares at him, wanting to know what he is doing there. Jonathan explains that he is responsible for accompanying the princess. Curious, the Duke asks if he comes very often, to which the bodyguard confirms. But Sir Watson says that not as often as he does. That is all the blonde man needed to hear. Before leaving, he says, "You had better do your utmost for my fiancé's safety." We return to Jonathan's meeting with the princess, who wants to know if there is any information, and the man finds it worrying to ask that first when she is sick. But after all, this is the only reason he is there, and Jonathan asks whether Her Highness cannot consider that his visit is motivated by knowing about her health. Charlotte points to the papers in his hand and says that those who come for that reason bring flowers or fruit, not a stack of documents. There is all the information about the third victim, as well as the ledger of business transactions and the whereabouts of the victim, the bakery owner. The person appeared to have a generous heart, supposedly participating in volunteer activities by regularly distributing bread in the slums of Norwood, and was on the way to do so on the fateful day. The princess says that gathering such detailed information must not have been easy, so she asks what the secret is, but once again the man says it is confidential. In the end, Charlotte thanks him and says she will get in touch as soon as she feels better, and soon begins to cough. Seeing this, Jonathan comments that the cold must have been from getting soaked in the rain and advises her to take care of her health first, and not the incident. This is a scolding that even Martha gave her. So the princess asks him to leave the documents on the table when he leaves. However, she loses strength in her hand, and the papers suddenly seem too heavy, and the stack of documents ends up on the floor. Jonathan asks if she is really so weak that she cannot even properly hold a stack of papers, but Charlotte feels embarrassed by this. Sir Watson says that he will tie them up and place them on the table so they can be read later, and tells her to rest. But something he said catches the protagonist's attention. It is the knot he tied with the cord, the important element for her investigation. The extraordinary skills of commoners from the slums of Norwood could be considered a curse. Despite being talented, they were never granted permission to rise in the hierarchy, which was particularly frustrating. Even when they showed superior performance in the end, only the nobility received opportunities. Commoners admitted to military academies were rare and were often looked down upon by noble families. After all, who would want to receive instruction from poor, low-class people? Therefore, they settled for lower-ranking positions within the imperial army. Even so, it was the best opportunity for common people. But what they witnessed in those positions obtained by such means was a mine of corruption. with unethical acts carried out in the name of the imperial army and vassal states, and a cartel of nobles who turned a blind eye to these crimes despite knowing about them. Jonathan, who raised legitimate arguments, was brought to trial under the accusation of assaulting a superior officer. While unjust orders were issued by the nobility and illicit incidents were instigated by them, in the end, the only person branded as a criminal was the common citizen, that is, him. So all that remained for him was a reputation of dishonor and the title of criminal. However, the person who extended a hand to him was the princess, who is known as the pursuer of Archduke Killian, foolish and useless, a ridiculous figure who could make people want to tear their hair out just by looking at her. Jonathan's first meeting with Charlotte involved a ridiculous proposal in his view, since she wanted to buy his loyalty. Charlotte said that what he went through was unjust, which was surprising, since no noble in the empire had ever sided with a commoner. That immediately made the young man think there was something behind her kindness, and that getting involved would certainly land him in trouble eventually. But the offer was too tempting to refuse, so selling a false loyalty was not a big deal to him. It should have been like that, but contrary to the rumors, Jonathan discovered that the princess was intelligent and modest, and surprisingly, she has a cute side. Another thing that was different from what he had heard was that she did indeed have affection for someone she loved, but it was not Archduke Killian, and instead Duke Adler, a person whom even commoners would not dare to cross paths with. However, he noticed that Charlotte also received disdain from him, just as she did from Killian. That day when he saw the princess in Count Morstan's garden, she was surrounded by withered flowers. Sir Watson felt a familiar sense of helplessness, and all he could offer were a few weak words of comfort. That was when he said, "The dress you wore at the last boutique suited you better." With the connection they now share, the bodyguard does not want the girl to be hurt by cold men who do not even deserve her. Returning to the present moment, Charlotte's expression completely changes, as if she had seen the most frightening thing, and Jonathan notices it, becoming very worried. So he approaches, asking the princess if she is all right. The young man desperately holds her face. Jonathan, still maintaining respect for a noble, calls her Your Excellency, even while desperate, but Charlotte can barely say a word, which makes him even more worried. Suddenly, the princess says, "The knot." The bodyguard immediately understands what she is referring to. The princess explains that it is not common, but in fact, it is not used in the Empire, but in Cortina. She explains that because it is very strong, the Imperial Army eventually adopted it, and it is a habit he kept from his time at the academy. Charlotte goes deeper into her investigation, wanting to know whether everyone uses it even after graduating, but it is more Jonathan's preference, since while training there, it became natural to get used to it. This time, it is Jonathan who becomes curious about why she is surprised by the knot. So Charlotte reveals that the one used by the serial killer to bind the victims is similar to this one. This makes the bodyguard ask whether that means she has just suspected him of being the culprit, which she denies. It is obvious that Jonathan feels offended. After all, she is suspecting the person who has helped her so much with the investigation. In the end, Charlotte admits that she thought so for a moment, and the protagonist comes to her senses, realizing that it cannot be him, since at the time of the first victim, he was stationed in Cortina as part of the Imperial Army. Still indignant, the bodyguard asks if that means everyone who went through the academy is a suspect, and includes Duke Adler himself with that knot on the umbrella. He also says that no ordinary person would be able to untie it. However, Jonathan realizes that all this time the person she has considered the main suspect is the Duke. Charlotte is truly caught off guard, and ends up shocking him by admitting it. Jonathan bombards her with questions, wanting to know since when she has thought this way, and whether she noticed any signs from him. The princess talks about the coincidence of Renius also being a man of 180 centimeters, with military training and having had contact with some victims. In the middle of this, the protagonist keeps the secret of her reincarnation, since he would not believe it. At least now the bodyguard knows that she has been investigating her fiancé under the pretext of finding out whether he is a serial killer before the wedding happens. This is too much for Jonathan's mind, and he even admits that Charlotte is probably the only person in the Empire who suspects the Duke, which is why it has been kept secret. Charlotte says that the only thing she needs is for him to continue helping with her investigation as he has been doing. After all, that is the agreement between them. Still, Jonathan wants to know why she is being told the real reason now. So the princess reveals that it is because she has come to trust him. Even though she bought his loyalty, Jonathan has shown himself to be quite faithful in helping. However, he asks why she would trust him so much based only on what she has seen. Charlotte answers, "Because you are someone who would never leave me alone in the rain, and that really is the kind of gesture that cannot be bought." And Jonathan, who hears this declaration, ends up blushing. The young man asks whether she does not like Duke Adler. Before an answer can be given, another coughing fit takes over the princess. Immediately, Jonathan grabs a cup of water, worried about whether she is all right. Charlotte then asks whether she would not be crazy enough to like a suspect of crimes against people's lives. In any case, the bodyguard only needs her help to find the culprit in this case. And if the person turns out to be Duke Adler, she intends to expose him before the wedding. Jonathan says that since he was bought, he must repay the favor and promises to help her even if it breaks his body. But Charlotte does not want things to reach that level. Still, Watson says that if that happens, it would be better for it to be him, since he is stronger and can recover quickly. The protagonist says that all she bought was his loyalty, so she does not want him to destroy his body. Charlotte believes she is in a good mood because she has relaxed, and she can also feel the effects of the medicine she took earlier. She says she feels tired and that she will rest, then asks the strong ones to leave. Jonathan also agrees that she needs to rest. The bodyguard helps cover her, promising that he will take care of the other tasks. Then days pass, and now recovered, Charlotte is in the office. She studies the third victim, the owner of the small bakery, a place famous for its delicious bread and popular among common people, where the shop owner was very generous and often worked as a volunteer in the slums. But there is no connection at all between Adler and this person. After all, the customer base was mainly commoners, such as schools and restaurants with no relation to the nobility, yet the sales were tremendous. However, Charlotte finds it strange that the bakery really managed to make so much profit. In addition, she checks that the expenses are not that high compared to the sales, and the princess feels that she has missed something amid so much information. Finding it strange, since there should be something in the transaction records, she is interrupted at that moment by Martha's entrance. She brings a letter from Renius talking about their next meeting. The Duke wrote that the location will be chosen by Charlotte herself. This is perfect for her, because it is exactly what she needs to begin investigating. Martha suggests that since it is summer, a boat ride would be refreshing, or perhaps watching a play. But the princess wants to do something new, like experiencing the lifestyle of commoners, which leaves the brunette impressed. Charlotte surprises her even more by saying that she will need to borrow the maid's clothes. When the time comes, very excited, the princess asks if they can take a walk along Baker Street, although the Duke's expression already shows that it does not sound very tempting. Renius says he does not believe there is any particular place worth visiting there and asks what exactly she wants to do there. Secretly, Charlotte knows that the area is full of small businesses, but she only answers that it is because she has friends there who told her it is quite interesting. Duke Adler is surprised, as he did not know his fiancée had commoners as friends. Charlotte immediately defends herself by talking about Martha being her only alternative, since she did not expect him to be so perceptive, and in truth she does not have any friends. Renius, understanding that a maid can be a friend to a princess, asks if that also means the commoner bodyguard. He says that it is normal to go to Baker Street with a maid, but that he does not think it is a good idea for just the two of them to go there alone. Charlotte begs, saying that she really wants the two of them to go there. With no alternative, the Duke agrees, earning praise from his fiancée about his great charitable heart. The Duke intends to ask his secretary to make a reservation at the restaurant they will visit, but the princess wants to have the experience of walking around like a commoner. This makes Renius question what that means, and then she says that she just wants to be alone in the presence of her fiancé, leaving the young man blushing and sweating at such an unusual request. But before they venture out, they need to stop by a boutique, and all that remains for the fiancé is to accept his girl's request. Realizing he is a noble, the shopkeeper warns that they are in the wrong store, and Charlotte denies it, saying they need men's clothing that does not stand out much. Renius still doubts whether that is necessary, but the princess clearly explains that what he is wearing makes him far too dazzling, which is completely out of place on Baker Street. The shopkeeper promptly goes to fulfill the request, looking for something more discreet. Renius finds it strange, as it is the first time he has worn ready-made clothes, and that remark excites Charlotte, who immediately tells him to try the piece on. The shopkeeper helps the Duke get dressed, and while Charlotte waits, she can hear the man marveling at the blonde's bulging muscles and firm chest, as well as praising his perfect skin that makes all eyes turn toward him. And thus Charlotte understands that the combination of a relaxed demeanor and a sculpted body is simply perfect and makes Renius the most irresistible man in the Empire. Suddenly, something catches her attention. Finally, the Duke appears, and despite wearing something simpler than usual, he remains attractive. Renius asks if it is normal for ready-made clothes to be so stuffy. The shopkeeper promptly explains that when a customer wears the store's clothes, it makes them look like they are wearing a high-quality tailored suit. But the Duke is not interested in knowing about that. He is interested in what the princess has to say, and still flustered, she stammers that it suits him well. Adler asks if it really does. Charlotte says, at first sight. Renius repeats it as a question. The princess becomes animated and explains that at first sight it looks amazing on him, and even asks if it does not smell good, matching perfectly with her taste. The truth is that Charlotte wanted to say that it feels like love at first sight. Even though she has said that many times before, she does not understand why this time it was so hard to express. The shopkeeper interrupts them, saying that he noticed they liked it very much, so he wants to know if they will take it. Renius not only buys the clothes he is wearing, but also everything in the store, which will not make much difference to his account since the suits there do not come close to the value of a single one he owns. The protagonist realizes it is the typical cliché dialogue that a boyfriend says when buying clothes for his partner. Well, secretly, the Duke is the greedy type when it comes to this kind of purchase. At least now he is ready to go to Baker Street. Thus, the two walk through a place no noble would ever visit for sheer pleasure. Renius asks if a destination has already been decided, and Charlotte immediately chooses the restaurant. Everything is nothing more than a lead for her investigation, since it is one of the main clients listed in the bakery's records. They have been importing and selling breads and desserts from there for a long time, and it is there that Sherlock Holmes will work alongside her beloved Watson, although Renius has no idea what is going on. Charlotte orders a well-done steak, remembering the blonde's small issue, plus a basket of bread and a chocolate dessert. The waitress writes down their order, promising to bring it shortly. As soon as she leaves, Duke Adler comments that even during his military training, he had better meals in more comfortable environments than this one, drawing a small laugh from the princess, who asks if this kind of thing is not rather fun, but only for her. Renius is not enjoying it, especially because he knows nothing about the place. Charlotte leans closer and whispers that it will be a secret between the two of them, revealing that she has been secretly coming to places like this for some time, and even recalling the last time she was found drunk in Norwood, living up to her reputation as a delinquent princess. But the only thing that strikes the Duke is that now the two of them share a secret. It does not take long for the food to arrive. Soon, Charlotte notices that the bread tastes different. The waitress says it is probably because she has not visited the restaurant in a long time, explaining that they now source their bread from somewhere else, since unfortunately the owner of the small bakery that used to supply them suffered an accident, lamenting that she was a very kind person. Charlotte is horrified by this terrible story. She tastes the cake and complains that it is sweet, whereas the bread from the old bakery was not. The girl explains that this one really is sweeter, and that the desserts and everything from there were the embodiment of such addictive sweetness that she felt as if she were under a spell every time she ate them. The waitress also says that the most famous item there was the vanilla cream, with its incredible flavor. Renius notices a certain interest from his fiancée in the bakery and asks if she has been there before, and the princess says it was something Martha told her about delicious bread coming from small bakery. But it is not something the Duke knows, as he is not involved in that sort of thing, nor is it of interest to him. He also says that she does not need to know his interests either. Charlotte retorts that at least not at the moment. After all, since she will be responsible for his household in the future, she must familiarize herself with various ingredients. And this remark makes the man choke as he imagines her as the head of the household. But because of that statement, the girl herself wonders why she said it, since as far as she knows, she will be dead by then. Still, she asks about it, and Renius explains that he is under his stepmother's control, and that they will be able to speak with the woman soon. Changing the subject, the protagonist says that the restaurant broke her expectations, but that it is unfortunate to know that the bakery owner suffered an accident, and she tries to catch a clue about how it happened. The Duke suggests that they look into it later, since she is curious. From his reaction, the princess realizes that he truly knows nothing. Noticing that the blonde has not eaten anything, the princess asks if he is not hungry, and he says he is fine. But Charlotte tries to convince him to taste the cake, saying it is delicious. She takes a piece and offers it to him. This time, Renius becomes nervous, not understanding this kind of behavior, so she has to explain that he should open his mouth as if saying, "Ah." But the Duke becomes even more nervous about doing that in public, and Charlotte says that this is what one does on a date, and once again feeds him. Before he can question it again, the princess pushes the piece of cake into his mouth. Then she asks how it is. Renius says it is very sweet. She agrees while eating calmly, which somehow ends up making the Duke blush. This is the main assertion technique, a method to extract information from someone based on known facts. When one person asks another a question, they usually react defensively because they suspect the intention behind the question. But humans have a nature that teaches them to correct others. If false information is casually mentioned during conversations, it will be corrected and may even prompt them to share more about the subject. Charlotte felt uncomfortable with the transaction records of small bakery because there were no records of purchases of sugar and spices. Even though these are essential ingredients for bakeries, the profit seemed very high without expenses for the main materials. She asked the waitress whether they made the bread without sugar, since the desserts from Small Bakery were much sweeter, and the most famous item was the vanilla cream, which is definitely contradictory information. However, the details did not seem to interest Renius, even though he had deliberately provided incorrect information about the victim's gender and the cause of death. So she wonders whether he is clever enough to avoid it or if he truly does not know. Renius draws her attention by asking if she is going to praise his beauty, and Charlotte says that he looks very handsome. The princess comments that she noticed sweets are not really to his taste, and he agrees. Charlotte then says that she is very fond of sweets and asks whether sugar is expensive in the empire, which the Duke confirms, saying it is an ingredient comparable to mining, and a monopoly privilege passed down from the royal family and then the noble families. And the one who holds those rights is Marquis d'Aoste, as well as the Empress's family. By coincidence, the Marquis's secretary was the fourth victim in the serial killer case. So the princess wonders if there is some connection between them, but returning to the date, it does not have time to end. The couple goes to another establishment in that area. Renius asks what kind of place it is, and the princess explains that she heard about a new bar in the place where the bakery used to be. Charlotte sits on the stool and immediately orders 2 glasses of whiskey with ice, but the Duke stops her midway, reminding her that they cannot drink too much in the middle of the day. Charlotte asks him not to worry, promising that this time she will not end up in prison, and she proposes a toast to his captivating eyes. She soon strikes up a conversation with the bartender, commenting on the former establishment there. Taking advantage of the fact that the man enters the topic, Charlotte mentions that the owner had no family, and he explains that it is because it was not the deceased woman's hometown, but it is not known where she came from, only that she was a very kind lady. Looking to the side, Charlotte is surprised to notice that Renius has already finished his drink, and when he is offered another, he refuses, saying he is already feeling dizzy. At another table, a fierce bet is taking place. The bartender simply asks them not to show any interest in that direction, as they are a group of loan sharks, who lure debtors into card games by promising to reduce their debts, but in the end only increase them. Remembering her past life, the protagonist knows that this is a practice that violates the law and involves gambling crimes. The man seems to notice her gaze on him. He then calls out to her, questioning why she is staring at him, and shouts angrily, demanding that she stop, being completely rude to the princess. He stands up and approaches, and soon the bartender explains that it is a misunderstanding, but the princess remains calm, while the hothead yells that she has lost her mind, saying that with those clothes she truly passes for a commoner, and the protagonist wonders whether she should take it as a joke and deal with the consequences. Although taking a punch from him might hurt a little, or even more, given her fragile body. But the punch does not come, because Renius grabs the thug's arm and squeezes hard, making him weaken, calling the man audacious. Renius says, "Try touching her again with your filthy hands." Another man arrives, grabbing the Duke, ready to teach him a lesson. But Renius is a soldier and easily knocks the man down, attracting more enemies who rush toward him. The Duke dodges a punch. Meanwhile, people watch, and Charlotte realizes that his military achievements were no joke. But she worries that if this continues, it will turn into an even worse fight. The bartender tries to end the commotion, asking the brawlers to stop, asking them to resolve the matter more honorably, like gentlemen, suggesting that they do so with a traditional duel. The cards on the table indicate that the game has been going on for some time. The man is confident in his hand. Renius shows no reaction, and Charlotte, worried, hopes that her fiancé will refuse. When the loan shark asks if he knows how to play cards, not to mention that the Duke swallowed the whiskey as if it were water, so she thinks he should put an end to all this nonsense. She asks what he is trying to do, as he is going to lose everything, and the blonde says that at the academy it was strictly forbidden to play cards. And it is quite clear since the idiot even managed to take the Duke's watch. At this rate, the protagonist thinks he will be left in nothing but his underwear. This time, the cards form a sequence, and apparently the Duke is about to lose his pants. Renius asks if she has something to offer, which makes the princess wonder whether he will continue even after nearly losing everything, not to mention that he is making the same face as gambling addicts she used to investigate. The protagonist glances at another person. It is the debtor who had been exploited earlier, and he laments being involved with these fifth-rate thieves. Charlotte tells her fiancé to step back, announcing that the team is changing players. Catching everyone at the table by surprise, they begin to laugh right afterward. One of the men says, well, tough guy, is your little girlfriend joining this duel now?" And then asks Charlotte if she has anything to offer. The girl places a beautiful brooch on the table, ready to begin the duel and perhaps restore her fiancé's honor. Soon the match starts, and those losers get a taste of despair. In Charlotte's hand, there is a full house. Thus, she manages to win back the Duke's watch. Still impressed, the blonde asks how she managed to do that. She explains that it is the result of her refined upbringing, though in truth it is a skill she learned from a rogue she once arrested for running an illegal gambling house in her past life. Those establishments were always active, and during 2 undercover investigations, she learned the necessary skills to avoid suspicion. That way, she managed to catch more than 20 people. Everyone is impressed by how skilled the girl is. Charlotte declares, "Let's go all in this round," willing to put everything she has won on the line. The loan shark mocks her, saying her bravery is impressive but questioning whether she can truly back it up, and Charlotte retorts that if it is too much, they can simply stop there. But before starting, the princess wants a contract to be signed first. The man agrees on the condition that if she wins, the debts will be cleared, but it will not be pleasant if she loses, because she would even have to sell her body to manage to pay everything. He starts the game with a perfect sequence. It is a straight flush, and the loan shark says the girl should not be so confident. But Charlotte is just getting started, and now it is her turn. She reveals her cards on the table, leaving everyone astonished, especially the Duke. The princess has a royal straight flush. With the victory secured, Charlotte takes the contract and says, "Perhaps you are the one who should not be so confident." At the end of the afternoon, the man who had been in trouble with the loan sharks thanks her for saving his life. Charlotte advises him not to do business with loan sharks again and hands over the contract showing that the debts have been cleared. But what happened was not because the man wanted it, but because it was a necessity due to his son being ill. And her heart aches just thinking about the child suffering, as no father could endure that, just like Charlotte's own. She takes her brooch and offers it to him, telling him to use it if he needs money for medicine, because she understands that just because the debt was cleared does not mean what is needed will magically appear. With eyes full of tears, the man can hardly believe such kindness from someone he has just met and thanks her deeply for everything. He asks for the name of his heroine so he can repay her in the future, but the princess tells him not to worry about that, and that taking care of his family is enough, then bids him farewell. Finally alone, Rhenius asks if she is always so generous, first saving Blair and now helping a poor man, and he questions whether she knows she will not truly benefit from this. But it was never about that. Her body simply reacts when she sees an injustice happen, and the Duke himself experienced strange things while he was in this district. Charlotte apologizes for dragging him into this crazy situation, and if it made him uncomfortable, assuring him it will not happen again. But the man surprises her by saying that thanks to her, he enjoyed watching everything unfold. It was the first time he had seen someone shuffle cards so fast and effortlessly. This is a relief, because Charlotte was afraid he might say he did not want to meet her again until the wedding day. The princess explains that her hands are faster than the eyes, and that she was worried about having offended him. The conversation ends abruptly when the Duke notices something. Rhenius pulls the princess into his arms. Startled, she asks what is wrong. He says that someone might be following them. Charlotte asks if it could be someone from the tavern earlier. For Rhenius, it would be lucky if it were them. However, if it is someone who knows their true identities, it could be a problem. He pulls something from his vest while saying that it would be better if there were no need for bloodshed. Charlotte asks when he picked that up, and the man replies, "Did you think I would walk through these streets with you completely defenseless?" He holds his fiancée as they walk. At the same time, the pursuer is right behind them. The Duke risks a glance, and he says that they need to run. One look is enough for both of them to agree and start running. The pursuer also quickens his pace. Rhenius holds Charlotte's hand, searching for a safe place to hide while using his weapon to protect them. The unknown man is carrying a dagger. Rhenius finds an alley and pulls his fiancée so the two of them can hide there. Thus, the pursuer loses sight of them. The Duke holds the princess in his arms, keeping her safe there. Charlotte has her ear close to his chest, hearing his accelerated heartbeat. They hear the man say, "It would be my end if I failed this mission." The protagonist asks if it is that person, but her fiancé asks her to be silent because he is coming. Indeed, the pursuer approaches and looks toward where the two of them are. But Rhenius is quick and strikes him with his weapon, making the man fall to the ground. With him unconscious, Rhenius asks if she recognizes his face from somewhere. Once again, the princess is silenced. It is possible to hear the footsteps of other people approaching. They might be companions of this pursuer. Rhenius is afraid he might have to use his weapon. Meanwhile, Charlotte also looks for a way to protect them. She grabs the wooden club. Even thinking it might not be necessary, the Duke asks her to be very careful not to hurt herself. The footsteps are closer, putting both of them on alert. Someone approaches. Rhenius immediately draws his weapon, but whoever it is recognizes him. The person is actually his loyal secretary. The Duke sighs in relief and says that he told him to follow from a distance. Alfred explains that he became worried when his master suddenly disappeared into the alley. Rhenius says it was because of the pursuer, and from what they can see, at least he is not an assassin. But he will be taken in for questioning. Now that everything is fine again, it is Charlotte who asks about the story of Alfred following them. and Renius confirms it, making it clear that his fiancée does not fully grasp her status as a member of royalty. Upset, she admits she did not think about it properly. The Duke tries to lift her mood by saying that, in any case, it was still fun, and he admits it would have been even more so if he had seen her swinging the club. He has a gentle smile as he looks at her. The protagonist, meanwhile, has a sparkle in her eyes. After the unproductive investigation on Baker Street, Charlotte has been busy with preparations for the Imperial Federation banquet. It is exhausting to study the history of all the participating countries and their delegations, but at least her advantage is that she has experience studying for exams. A voice asks, "Your Highness, are you going in now?" It is Sir Watson waiting for her. Surprised, the princess asks if he has been waiting in this heat and whether he must be tired, but he says there are many shaded places around. Smiling, the man says it is not very difficult to wait for her, making the princess blush. Charlotte says she has good news, that due to security reasons, personal attendance will not be allowed at the Imperial Federation event, so the bodyguard can take the day off and rest. But apparently it is not such good news for him. Jonathan asks who will protect her. Learning that the Imperial Palace will be managing security at this event, he asks if her partner will be the Duke. Charlotte confirms, finding the question a bit strange. Jonathan asks if she is not being too careless. A bit agitated, he reminds her of what happened on Baker Street with the pursuer and questions whether she even knows who is behind it. But no matter what he thinks, Charlotte cannot take him to the event, nor can she distance herself from the Duke. Watson asks why she needs to take such risks to gather evidence. The issue is how the protagonist should explain that she is the 8th victim, no matter how far she stays from the main suspect. If she does not catch the criminal, she will not be able to avoid her end. Sighing, the princess says she cannot distance herself from her fiancé without a reason, reminding him that this person is Duke Adler. The man's reaction is to turn his face away. Before the mood worsens, Martha ends up appearing. Finally, the day of the Imperial Union banquet arrives. The servants are working at full speed to keep everything in order. Meanwhile, Charlotte is absolutely stunning. Martha is euphoric as always, saying she knew the dress would suit her perfectly and is happy that they managed to prepare something so beautiful to wear, especially since the princess has not attended any banquet for some time. The previous appearance of the true Charlotte was the first and last since she was expelled from the embassy for her behavior. She asks about the Duke, and the maid assumes he must have a busy schedule but that he will accompany her. And indeed, his word was kept. Her Highness's eyes are enchanted by the sight of the Duke, having to admit to herself that he is like a divine being, with a radiant aura shining behind him, yet all she says is that he looks magnificent. Renius also compliments her, saying she looks very beautiful and that the dress suits her perfectly. She also thanks him for choosing such a wonderful dress. Charlotte makes it clear that she knows it was the blonde man who paid the extra and reveals that no matter how she looks at it, she still feels it is a bit too much of a dress, but he has no idea what his fiancé means. The princess makes it clear that she is not complaining, only expressing her gratitude to him, and he replies that this gratitude should go to the person who made the dress. This makes the girl smile. Noticing the agitation around them, Adler asks if there was any problem at the palace, and Charlotte explains that because she was busy with the event, things ended up like this. Taking advantage of the topic, Renius comments that he knows about the person who followed them on Baker Street, and that he is one of Prince Frederick's men, saying that the criminal is so incompetent yet still audacious, and that he confessed that it was her brother who ordered everything. Charlotte can sense a threatening vibration coming from the blonde man. However, her concern is whether the pursuer was trying to gather information. After all, she knows that Frederick harbors resentment, and even showed it toward her during the meeting, and now he is following her, probably to exploit any of her weaknesses. The man also insisted that he did not want to harm them, which makes sense to the princess, since despite carrying a dagger, he did not use it, suggesting he did not intend to hurt them immediately. Not to mention that attempting to harm a member of royalty carries severe punishment, so he must have made sure before making any move. Frederick agrees with this line of thought that the prince tasked him with gathering useful information. Renius says that with the spy's confession, she has the option to bring this matter before the court. Charlotte is perplexed just thinking about accusing the prince. The Duke says that doing so would be advantageous, not to mention that there is a witness, and he assures her that she will not need to worry about any reaction from Frederick. However, it is not uncommon for the palace to use people to spy on others, and since no harm was done, the protagonist thinks that making this public would not cause any damage to her brother. Instead, it would tarnish the reputation of the nobility even more, especially since she was posing as a commoner on Baker Street, so she will not pursue it further as they returned unharmed, and she does not want to complicate things unnecessarily, and Duke Adler respects her wish. However, he advises her to be more cautious around the prince's associates for a while. Hearing this kind of concern from the person who will be responsible for her end is unsettling. It is this attitude that makes Charlotte lower her guard, even though he is the main suspect. All the guests are enjoying themselves, oblivious to what is happening around them, until their attention is drawn to the announcement of the arrival of the princess and the duke. The two of them are radiant, and drawing attention wherever they pass. People's gazes are tense upon them, leaving Charlotte somewhat nervous. One person among the guests draws attention. It is Madame Taylor, a very powerful figure who controls vast commercial interests within the empire and is the emperor's sister. Charlotte greets her aunt. The woman promptly comments that she could not look her in the eyes the last time they met, and says that her niece's palate has become more refined since that disaster, and the princess laughs, agreeing. She also says that she heard the girl has become quite impressive, comments that Charlotte already expected to be sarcastic. The lady says that the royal family is in great debt, and that she heard her niece saved the lives of several nobles, including the emperor. Her words leave the princess perplexed, and she continues by listing her achievements, such as the solution to grain overproduction, suggesting that it be used to produce alcohol. Rhenius joins the conversation and says that it was indeed Charlotte who came up with the solution. The aunt says that the suggestion is also beneficial to her since she holds the rights to the alcoholic beverage business. People who hear this gossip that it was nothing more than pure luck. In any case, the emperor's sister invites Charlotte to the next tea party, confessing that she is already eager to meet her there, leaving everyone completely surprised. It may seem simple, but it is practically a small political arena for influential women of the empire, and being invited means that one has gained considerable influence in high imperial society. With this, Charlotte can actively compete for the succession to the throne. Everyone who once belittled her now surrounds her, praising everything the girl has done. She also notices that the princess is wearing something from the Emer's boutique, a situation very different from what she experienced at Lady Morstan's debutante ball. Charlotte is approached by another person. The man introduces himself as Derek von dem Linderman. She did not expect to receive so much attention, but she had at least prepared herself in advance. The princess comments that she has heard about him and shows her good grasp of business dealings in the kingdom of Demios. Rhenius quickly puts an end to the situation, telling the lord that the princess needs to prepare for the royal event and that they must leave. Derek understands the situation and says he is looking forward to meeting again, but is promptly cut off by the duke, who says that this may not happen. As soon as the lord leaves, the princess asks if it is not too early for the banquet, and he insists that they must strictly follow the schedule. Charlotte says that she did not even have the chance to speak with Derek, which makes her fiancé ask if there was any reason for them to talk. Even finding his reaction strange, the princess denies it, but it is too late, and Rhenius is extremely irritated, saying that he despises those who overstep their bounds. To Charlotte, it feels as if Lord Linderman touched something that belongs to him, not to mention that she knows about a dispute over mining rights between them, being the attraction of that party. Another person calls out to the princess. This time, it is Archduke Killian, making the look of disdain between the men inevitable. And now, what will be the princess's fate at this banquet? And this is where we end today's recap of Undercover Princess, up to chapter 26. And honestly, this romance is getting dangerously good. What started as an undercover investigation into a serial killer has slowly turned into a tense, emotional, slow-burn romance where feelings are absolutely not part of the plan. What do you guys think about this romance? Charlotte is really careful, but it's hard not to fall for the Duke, right? Especially when he's that handsome, even ignoring how toxic and jealous he can be. Do you ship this couple? Are you enjoying the story so far? If you like it, let me know and I'll continue the recap. Kisses, and see you next time.